It is 3 in the morning, and the city hums its restless tune. Outside your window, a distant siren sings a lonely song, and the streetlights cast long, skeletal shadows across your room. But the real noise, the relentless static, is not outside. It is within you. You lie in bed, your body aching for rest, but your mind is a storm of thoughts. Unfinished tasks from yesterday circle like vultures, while anxieties about tomorrow rise like a tide. A conversation you had last week replays itself, every word scrutinized, every pause filled with imagined meaning. You think about bills, about expectations, about the person you are supposed to be, and the person you feel you are. There is a weight on your chest, a quiet panic that tightens its grip with every tick of the clock. This is not a rare night of tossing and turning. This has become the new normal, a shared, silent symptom of our times. This scene, in countless variations, repeats itself in millions of rooms, every single night. We are the most connected generation in history, yet we feel profoundly disconnected, especially from ourselves. We have been taught how to build careers, how to accumulate possessions, how to present a polished version of our lives to the world. But no one ever taught us how to simply be. No one gave us a map for our own inner landscape. And so we find ourselves lost, adrift in a sea of constant stimulation, pursued by a vague but persistent feeling that something is deeply wrong. We seek solutions in distractions, in productivity, in the promise of the next purchase, the next achievement. But these are only temporary fixes, fleeting moments of relief that soon give way to the familiar, underlying hum of anxiety. But what if there was another way? What if the solution was not to add more, but to gently take away? Not to run faster, but to learn how to stand still. There exists an ancient path, a wisdom that is less a religion to be adopted, and more a science of the mind to be explored. It does not promise a life free from problems, for storms will always come. Instead, it offers a different kind of promise, the promise of learning how to build a shelter within yourself. It offers the tools to find calm in the midst of chaos and clarity in the fog of confusion. This is an invitation to listen to a timeless lullaby, a gentle song of wisdom that can soothe the modern, restless heart and guide you back to the quiet, peaceful center of your own being. To begin a journey of healing, we must first have the courage to face the diagnosis. In our modern world, we have many names for our disquiet. We call it stress, anxiety, burnout, depression. We see it as a personal problem, a sign of weakness, or a chemical imbalance to be corrected. The wisdom of the Buddha, however, offers a single, more encompassing term for this fundamental human condition. The term is dukkha. When translated simply as suffering, the word can sound heavy, pessimistic, even bleak. It can conjure images of tragedy and despair. But this translation misses the profound subtlety of the original meaning. It is far more accurate and helpful to think of dukkha not as a harsh judgment on life, but as a physician's precise diagnosis. Imagine having a persistent, low-grade fever and a feeling of constant fatigue. You wouldn't call this state of being agony, but you certainly wouldn't call it wellness. It is a state of being fundamentally off balance, a subtle friction that underlies everything you do. This is the heart of dukkha. It is the stone in your shoe, the background static in your mind, the deep-seated sense that things are not quite right. Acknowledging dukkha is not an act of giving up. It is the first, most essential step toward true well-being. It is to look clearly and without panic at the nature of our shared experience. This diagnosis of dukkha can be understood on 3 distinct levels. The first is the most obvious, the one we readily call suffering. This is dukkha as pain, or dukkha. It is the headache that throbs behind your eyes after a long day. It is the sharp pang of grief when you lose someone you love. It is the sting of harsh words, the ache of a broken body, the cold dread of a frightening medical diagnosis. This form of dukkha is undeniable, a raw and direct part of being a living, feeling creature. We all experience it, and we do not need to be convinced of its reality. It is the overt, unavoidable pain of life. The second level is more subtle and perhaps more pervasive in our modern lives. It is called viparinama dukkha, the suffering that arises from change, from impermanence. This is the anxiety that lurks beneath even our happiest moments. You get the promotion you've worked for, and for a while there is joy. But soon, a new fear creeps in. The fear of not meeting expectations. The fear of losing this new position. You are on a beautiful vacation, watching a perfect sunset, and a quiet sadness touches you because you know this moment cannot last, that soon you will be back to the daily grind. This is the pain of attachment to pleasure. We cling to happy moments, to youth, to relationships, to success, desperately trying to make them permanent in a world where nothing is. This struggle against the natural flow of life, this resistance to change, is a constant source of underlying tension. The joy we seek from external things is like writing on water, beautiful but fleeting, and the very act of trying to hold on to it creates a unique kind of suffering. It is the reason why a life spent chasing one pleasure after another can feel so exhausting and ultimately so empty. The third and most profound level is called sankhara dukkha. This is the most difficult to grasp, yet it is the key to understanding the pervasive anxiety of our times. It is the suffering inherent in being a conditioned being. It is the background dissatisfaction of existence itself. Even when there is no overt pain, and even when we are not clinging to a fleeting pleasure, there can still be this low-grade hum of unease, a sense of incompleteness. It is the feeling of being burdened by the constant maintenance of our self. We are always managing, protecting, and promoting this identity we call me. This is the stress of the endlessly scrolling mind, the pressure of social media, where we compare our messy, real lives with the curated perfection of others. It is the loneliness felt in a crowd, the feeling of being a fragile, separate self in a vast and overwhelming universe. Sankhara dukkha is the friction of our very existence, the subtle but constant effort it takes to be someone. It is the reason why even a life filled with comfort and success can still feel strangely unfulfilling, as if we are missing the one thing that truly matters. This is the core disquiet that sends us searching, often in all the wrong places, for a peace that seems forever out of reach. Now, let us bring this ancient diagnosis into the heart of our own lives, into the very center of our modern struggle. Let us consider the story of a woman named Kisa Gotami. It is a story that has been told for over 2,000 years, yet it speaks directly to our experience today. Kisa Gotami was a young mother, and her life was filled with joy, for she had a beautiful baby son. But one day, tragedy struck, and the child fell ill and died. Consumed by a grief so powerful it bordered on madness, Kisa Gotami refused to accept that her son was gone. She clutched his small, lifeless body to her chest and went from house to house, from person to person, desperately seeking a medicine that could bring him back to life. Some people mocked her, others turned away in pity, but no one could help her. Finally, a wise man saw her immense suffering and, taking pity on her, directed her to the one person who might have a cure. He told her to go and find the Buddha. She ran to him, laid her child at his feet, and pleaded for the miracle medicine. The Buddha looked at her with boundless compassion and said, "There is only one way to heal your grief. You must go into the city and bring me back a single mustard seed. But there is one condition. The mustard seed must come from a house where no one has ever died." Filled with a desperate hope, Kisa Gotami began her quest. She went to the first house, her heart pounding. "The Buddha has sent me," she explained. "I need a mustard seed to cure my son. Have you any to spare?" "Of course," the woman of the house replied. "We have plenty." As the woman went to fetch the seed, Kisa Gotami asked the all-important question, "Has anyone in your family, a parent, a child, a spouse, ever died in this house?" The woman's face fell. "Oh, my dear," she said softly. "The living are few, but the dead are many. We lost my father just last year." With a heavy heart, Kisa Gotami went to the next house, and the next, and the next. The story was always the same. Every door she knocked on, every family she spoke to, had a story of loss. One had lost a husband, another a sister, another a child. House after house, she heard the same refrain. The living are few, but the dead are many. As the sun began to set, Kisa Gotami sat by the side of the road, the city lights flickering on one by one. She looked at her son's still form, and then at the lights of the city. A profound realization washed over her. Her grief, which had felt so intensely personal, so isolating, was not hers alone. The pain she felt was the pain of all humanity. The loss she had endured was a thread in the vast shared tapestry of life and death. In that moment, her frantic, selfish grief transformed into a deep, compassionate understanding. She was no longer just a mother who had lost a child. She was a human being who had touched the universal truth of suffering. She understood that death was not a unique curse visited upon her, but a natural law that touches every single door. With this wisdom born from experience, she was finally able to gently lay her son's body down, and her own healing could begin. Kisa Gotami's journey is our journey. We are all, in our own way, clutching a loss, a fear, a disappointment, believing it to be uniquely ours. Why me, we ask. Why is this happening to me? This question isolates us, trapping us in the prison of our personal story. The first noble truth, the diagnosis of dukkha, is the Buddha's compassionate instruction to us. It asks us to do what Kisa Gotami did. It asks us to walk through the world and see that our private anxiety, our personal stress, our secret dissatisfaction is not a private failing. It is a shared condition. The pressure you feel at work is felt by your colleague in the next cubicle. The loneliness you feel on a Friday night is shared by thousands of others behind their glowing screens. The fear of not being good enough is a silent anthem sung in the hearts of millions. To accept the reality of dukkha is to put down the heavy burden of why me and to join the vast, imperfect, and beautiful family of humanity. It is not an act of pessimism, but the ultimate act of realism and self-compassion. It is the moment we stop fighting the diagnosis and become truly ready to inquire about its cause, to seek the source of the fever, so that we may finally begin to find the cure. If the brave acceptance of our shared disquiet is the first step, the second is to ask a simple, powerful question: why? If we all experience this fundamental dissatisfaction, this dukkha, where does it come from? Is it woven into the fabric of the universe, an inescapable fate, or does it have a specific, identifiable cause? The Buddha's great insight, the core of his teaching on liberation, is that it does have a cause. Our suffering is not random. It is not a punishment from an angry God, nor is it a sign that life is inherently meaningless. It arises from a specific source within our own minds, a source we can observe, understand, and ultimately transform. To illustrate this, consider the parable of the two arrows. Imagine you are walking through a forest and you are struck by an arrow. The physical pain is immediate and sharp. This first arrow is unavoidable. It represents the inevitable pains of life we explored before, the sickness, the loss, the disappointments that are part of being human. No amount of wisdom or practice can guarantee that first arrows will never strike us. But then, what happens next is crucial. Most of us, having been struck by the first arrow, immediately shoot a second arrow into ourselves. This second arrow is our reaction to the first. It is the arrow of judgment, of resistance, of despair. It is the thought, why me? This is terrible. I can't stand this. It shouldn't be this way. This second arrow is not made of wood and stone. It is made of our own mind. It is the suffering we add on top of the original pain. The first arrow is pain. The second arrow is suffering. And the Buddha taught that while we may not always be able to avoid the first arrow, we have the power to stop firing the second. The cause of our suffering, the poison on that second arrow, has a name. It is tanha. Tanha is a word from the ancient Pali language that is often translated as craving or desire, but its meaning is closer to thirst. It is not the simple, healthy desire for food when you are hungry, or for warmth when you are cold. Tanha is a deep, compulsive, and unquenchable thirst. It is the restless, demanding energy in the mind that is always seeking something outside of itself to feel complete. It is the engine of our discontent, the ghost in the machine that whispers, "This is not enough, you need more, you need something different." This thirst is the root cause of dukkha. It is the fuel that keeps the fires of anxiety, stress, and dissatisfaction burning. To understand this thirst, is to understand the very mechanism of our own unhappiness. This thirst manifests in our lives in three primary ways. The first, and most easily recognizable, is the thirst for sense pleasures, known as kamatana. This is the constant craving for things that feel good to our five senses and our mind. It is the craving for that extra slice of cake, the next episode of a captivating show, the validation of a like on social media, the thrill of a new purchase, or the intensity of a sexual encounter. Society not only condones this thirst, it actively cultivates it. The entire engine of modern consumer culture is built on stimulating and promising to satisfy our kamatana. It tells us that happiness is just one click, one purchase, one experience away. But the very nature of sense pleasure is that it is fleeting. The delicious taste of the cake fades. The excitement of the new car wears off. The pleasure of the vacation ends. And what is left? The thirst remains, often stronger than before. We are left on what psychologists call a hedonic treadmill, running faster and faster, seeking ever greater stimulation, just to feel the same level of satisfaction. This desperate chase for pleasure that never lasts is a primary source of our exhaustion and our feeling of emptiness. We are trying to fill a bottomless cup. The second form of this thirst is more subtle, but even more powerful. It is the thirst for existence or for becoming, known as bhavatanha. This is not just a craving for a thing or an experience. It is the craving to be something. It is the deep, ego-driven desire to become more successful, more famous, more intelligent, more respected, more spiritual. It is the voice that says, "I will be happy when I get that promotion," or "I will be at peace when I finally own my own home," or "My life will have meaning when I find the perfect partner." This is the thirst for a future, idealized self. We create an image in our minds of the person we think we should be, and then we live in a state of constant striving, of perpetual becoming. This fuels our ambition, but it also fuels our deepest anxieties. It creates a constant gap between the reality of who we are right now and the fantasy of who we want to become. We are always living in the future, never at home in the present moment. This kind of thirst turns life into a project, a series of goals to be achieved, rather than a journey to be experienced. And even if we achieve our goals, bhavatanha is not satisfied. A new, higher goal simply appears on the horizon, and the race begins again, leaving us with the gnawing feeling that we are never quite good enough as we are. The third face of this thirst is the opposite, yet equally potent. It is the thirst for non-existence, for annihilation, known as vibhavatanha. This is the craving to get rid of something unpleasant. When faced with pain, fear, boredom, or shame, the immediate impulse is to escape, to numb ourselves, to annihilate the feeling. This thirst is the driving force behind all forms of avoidance and addiction. It is the person who drinks a bottle of wine to forget a stressful day at work. It is the teenager who plays video games for hours to avoid the awkwardness of social interaction. It is the compulsive, scrolling through our phones, a desperate attempt to avoid the discomfort of being alone with our own thoughts. We are terrified of our own inner voids, of our own pain, and so we seek to destroy the experience. This craving for oblivion can be as simple as changing the subject in a difficult conversation, or as destructive as addiction to drugs, or even suicidal ideation in its most extreme form. It is the belief that if we can just eliminate the unpleasant feeling, we will be at peace. But this is a profound misunderstanding. By constantly running from our discomfort, we never learn to understand it or develop the resilience to face it. The monster we refuse to look at only grows larger in the dark. To truly grasp the self-defeating nature of tanha, consider this story. A man is adrift on a life raft in the middle of a vast ocean. He has been without water for days, and he is tormented by a raging thirst. The sun beats down, and his throat is a desert. All around him, as far as the eye can see, is water, a boundless, shimmering, tempting expanse of it. He knows he should not drink it. He knows it is salt water, but the thirst, the tanha, becomes an all-consuming madness. It screams at him. Just one sip will bring relief. In a moment of desperation, he gives in. He scoops up the clear, cool water in his hands and drinks deeply. For a fleeting second, there is a sensation of moisture, a moment of perceived relief, but it is a cruel illusion. Almost immediately, the salt begins to ravage his system. His dehydration becomes exponentially worse. The momentary relief gives way to an even more intense, burning, agonizing thirst. His mind becomes delirious, his body weakens, and his desperate act to quench his thirst has only sealed his fate, leading him more quickly to his demise. This is a perfect metaphor for our relationship with craving. The world of sights, sounds, tastes, achievements, and distractions is the saltwater ocean. Our inner feeling of lack, our dukkha, is the thirst. In our desperation, we drink from this ocean, hoping to find satisfaction. And for a moment, it seems to work. But the pleasure is fleeting, and it leaves us thirstier than before, more dehydrated in spirit, more desperate for the next drink, which we now believe is the only possible solution. We are caught in a tragic feedback loop, where the attempted cure becomes the very heart of the disease. We have correctly diagnosed the feeling of being unwell. Now, we have found its source. It is not the world, it is not other people, it is not our circumstances that are the fundamental problem. It is this internal, burning thirst. Seeing this is not a cause for despair. It is a moment of incredible power. Because if the cause of our suffering is our own craving, then the power to end that suffering must also lie within our own hands. It means we are not helpless victims of circumstance. We are participants, with the capacity to change the very dynamic that creates our pain. The question then is no longer, why do I suffer? But rather, is it possible to be free from this thirst? We have walked into the heart of our own restlessness. We have named the illness, this pervasive sense of disquiet called dukkha, and we have stared directly at its cause, the relentless, burning thirst of craving, of tanha. To remain here, with only this diagnosis and its origin, could feel like a sentence of despair. It could seem as though we are caught in a hopeless cycle, destined to be forever thirsty, while adrift on an ocean of salt water. But this is precisely where the journey takes its most crucial and liberating turn. The Buddha did not stop at a diagnosis of our condition. He went further, offering a prognosis, a promise so radical and so profound that it has the power to change everything. This is the third noble truth, the truth of Nirodha. Nirodha means cessation or ending. It is the unambiguous declaration that the thirst of tanha can be quenched, that the fever of dukkha can break, and that the cycle of suffering can be brought to an end. This is not a vague hope or a wishful prayer. It is presented as a fundamental law of the mind. Just as a disease that has a specific cause can be cured by eliminating that cause, the suffering that arises from craving can be ended by extinguishing that craving. This is the light at the end of the tunnel, the cool hand on a feverish brow. It is the truth that freedom is not a myth, but the innate potential of every human heart. This state of freedom, this cessation of suffering, is known by a more famous name, nirvana. And there is perhaps no word in Eastern philosophy more misunderstood in the West than this. Our minds, conditioned by our own cultural stories, immediately try to place nirvana within a familiar framework. We imagine it as a kind of heavenly paradise, a beautiful garden in the clouds where we go after we die, a reward for a virtuous life. Or we swing to the other extreme, imagining it as a total annihilation of the self, a grey, passionless void where we simply cease to exist. Both of these interpretations miss the mark entirely. They are projections of our own hopes and fears onto a concept that lies beyond them. To understand nirvana, we must first let go of what we think it is. The word itself offers the most potent clue. The literal meaning of nirvana is to extinguish or to blow out, like blowing out a candle flame. This image is not one of destruction, but of liberation. What, then, is being extinguished? It is the three fires that fuel all of our suffering: the fire of greed and craving, the fire of hatred and aversion, and the fire of ignorance and delusion. These fires, fanned by the constant winds of our thirsty, grasping minds, are what create the heat of our anxiety and the smoke of our confusion. Nirvana is the state of profound coolness, clarity, and peace that is revealed when these fires are put out, because their fuel, tanha, has been completely cut off. Nirvana is therefore not a place you go to. It is a state you realize, a state that is accessible in this very life, in this very body. It is the mind's natural, uncovered state, when it is no longer hijacked by the tyranny of compulsive desire. What does such a state feel like? It is not a state of numb indifference. In fact, it is the opposite. When the chattering, demanding voice of craving is silenced, the mind becomes extraordinarily sensitive and alive. When you are no longer desperately seeking the next pleasure or frantically running from the next pain, you can finally be fully present with life as it unfolds. The senses become sharper, the world more vivid. A simple meal, a walk in the park, a conversation with a friend, all take on a depth and richness that was previously obscured by the static of your wanting mind. It is a state of unshakable peace, a peace that is not dependent on external conditions. It is not the fragile peace of having everything go your way. It is the deep, resilient peace that remains even when the storms of life are raging. It is the discovery of a place of stillness within you that the world cannot touch. It is freedom, but not the freedom to do whatever you want. That is the slavery of impulse. This is a higher freedom, the freedom from the relentless push and pull of your own likes and dislikes, the freedom from being a puppet to your own reactive emotions. Imagine for a moment that every time someone criticized you, you felt a surge of defensive anger. A trigger, the criticism, leads to an immediate, automatic, and painful reaction, the anger. This is the mind caught in the grip of tanha, craving praise and hating blame. The experience of nirodha, of cessation, is the cultivation of a space between that trigger and your reaction. The criticism still arrives, the first arrow still strikes. But now, instead of an instant flash of anger, there is a moment of stillness, of clear seeing. In that space, you are free. You can see the anger beginning to arise, but you are no longer identified with it. You can watch it, as you would watch a cloud pass in the sky. You can choose not to feed it. You can choose to respond with understanding, with patience, or with silence. You have broken the chain of automatic reaction. You are no longer a slave to the event. This is the taste of nirvana in daily life. It is the gradual unbinding of the knots of habit that cause us so much pain. It is the dawning realization that you are not your anger, you are not your fear, you are not your craving. You are the spacious, silent awareness in which all these things arise and pass away. Let us use another metaphor. Imagine a person who has suffered from a chronic, painful illness since birth. The pain is their constant companion. They don't know what it is like to live without it. Their entire life is organized around managing the pain, avoiding things that make it worse, and seeking temporary relief. Then, one day, they find a definitive cure. After completing the treatment, they wake up one morning, and for the first time, they feel nothing. The pain is simply gone. What is this feeling? It is not a wild, ecstatic joy. It is something deeper. It is a profound sense of relief, of lightness. It is the simple, miraculous absence of a burden they have carried for so long. They can now walk, run, and live with a freedom they never thought possible. Their world has opened up. This is nirodha. The illness is dukkha, fueled by the virus of tanha. The cessation of that illness is nirvana. It is not the addition of something new, but the removal of what was obscuring our natural state of health. It is the mind returning to its own inherent balance, clarity, and peace. It is the end of the war against ourselves. So, this is the good news, the vital prognosis that changes the entire landscape of our inner world. Our suffering, as real and as painful as it is not a permanent condition. It is not our ultimate identity. Freedom is possible. Peace is possible. A life lived without the constant agitation of craving is not a fantasy, but the very goal of this path. We have now laid out the first three truths. We have faced the diagnosis that there is a fundamental disquiet in our lives. We have identified its root cause in our own insatiable thirst. And now, we have affirmed the hopeful truth that a cure exists, that this thirst can be quenched and this disquiet can be stilled. This realization naturally brings us to the final and most practical question of all. If a cure exists, what is it? What is the medicine? What is the prescription we must follow to walk the path from the burning shores of our suffering to the cool, clear waters of lasting peace? This question leads us directly to the final truth, the map for the journey ahead. We have arrived at a place of profound significance on our journey. We have looked upon our disquiet, our dukkha, and named it without fear. We have traced its origins to the deep, burning thirst of our own minds, the craving known as tanha, and, most importantly, we have been given the incredible news that a cure exists, that the cessation of this thirst, nirodha, is a tangible possibility. This is where the path shifts from diagnosis to treatment, from understanding the problem to engaging with the solution. This is the fourth noble truth, the truth of the way, known as magga. If the first three truths tell us what the situation is, this final truth tells us what to do about it. It is the doctor's prescription, the detailed map, the practical, step-by-step guide that leads from the shore of suffering to the shore of lasting peace. This guide is the Noble Eightfold Path. The word path is perfect, for it is not a static destination or a rigid set of beliefs. It is a way of walking, a way of living, a process of gradual cultivation that transforms every aspect of our being. At first glance, a path with 8 components may seem daunting, like a complex checklist of rules to be memorized and followed. But this is a misunderstanding of its elegant design. These are not 8 sequential steps, where you must perfect the first before moving to the second, like climbing a ladder. It is far more organic. Imagine instead the intertwined strands that form a strong rope. Each strand lends its strength to the others, and the rope as a whole is far stronger than any single strand. So it is with the Eightfold Path. The factors are practiced simultaneously, each one informing and reinforcing the others. An improvement in one area will naturally lead to growth in another. As your understanding deepens, your actions become more skillful. As your actions become more skillful, your mind becomes calmer. As your mind becomes calmer, your understanding deepens further. It is an upward spiral of positive reinforcement, a holistic system for human flourishing. This path is also known as the middle way, a term that captures its essential wisdom. It skillfully avoids 2 extremes that can trap a spiritual seeker. On one side is the extreme of sensual indulgence, the belief that happiness can be found by satisfying every craving. We have already seen how this leads to the saltwater thirst of tanha. On the other side is the extreme of severe self-denial, the attempt to conquer the spirit by punishing the body. This only leads to a weakened mind and body, not to liberation. The Eightfold Path walks a skillful line between these two, a path of balance, intelligence, and moderation, a path that nourishes both body and mind so that wisdom can arise. To make this path more accessible, we can group its 8 factors into 3 essential pillars, 3 foundational aspects of training: ethical conduct, mental discipline, and wisdom. The first pillar is ethical conduct, or sila. This is the groundwork, the foundation upon which the entire structure is built. It concerns our engagement with the world, our relationships with others. It is about learning to act and speak in ways that cause no harm to ourselves or to any other being. This pillar includes 3 path factors: right speech, right action, and right livelihood. This is not about following a set of moral commandments out of fear of punishment. It is based on the wise understanding that our own well-being is inextricably linked to the well-being of others. When we speak with cruelty, when we act with greed, when we earn our living in a way that harms others, we are sowing the seeds of agitation in our own minds. We create guilt, fear, and restlessness. By committing to harmlessness, we cultivate a mind that is calm, clear, and free from remorse. This inner peace is the essential soil in which the deeper practices of meditation can take root. The second pillar is mental discipline, or samadhi. Once our outward behavior is in harmony, we can turn our attention inward to the training of the mind itself. This is the heart of meditative practice. Our minds, left to their own devices, are often like wild horses, running uncontrollably from thought to thought, dragged around by impulses and emotions. The practice of samadhi is the gentle but firm process of taming this wild energy. This pillar includes 3 path factors: right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. Through these practices, we learn to let go of unskillful mental states and to cultivate skillful ones. We develop the capacity to remain present and aware, rather than being lost in the past or the future. We learn to focus our attention, transforming the scattered, chaotic energy of the mind into a powerful, clear, and stable instrument. This is the inner work that develops the strength and clarity needed to see into the true nature of things. The third and final pillar is wisdom, or panya. This is the ultimate goal of the path, the fruit that grows from the well-tended tree of ethical conduct and mental discipline. Wisdom is not merely the accumulation of intellectual knowledge or the belief in a certain doctrine. It is a direct, penetrating insight into the nature of reality. This pillar consists of the remaining 2 path factors: right view and right intention. It is about seeing the world, ourselves, and our experiences, not through the distorted lens of our cravings and fears, but clearly as they truly are. It is the wisdom that understands the law of cause and effect, that sees the impermanent and interconnected nature of all things, and that finally cuts through the ignorance that lies at the very root of our suffering. This is the wisdom that liberates. To understand the relationship between the path and the goal, the Buddha offered a powerful and practical parable, the parable of the raft. Imagine a person standing on the bank of a great wide river. The shore they are on is dangerous, filled with crocodiles, snakes, and countless other perils. This near shore represents our ordinary life in samsara, the endless cycle of craving and suffering. The far shore, in the distance, is safe, peaceful, and secure. This is nirvana. There is no bridge to cross the river and no ferry to take them. The person, being wise, does not simply sit and despair. They decide to take action. They gather together whatever they can find on the shore: reeds, branches, logs, and vines. These materials represent the 8 factors of the path. With great effort and skill, they bind these materials together, constructing a simple but sturdy raft. Then, clinging to the raft, using their hands and feet to paddle, they push off into the dangerous current. The raft supports them, keeping them safe from the dangers in the water, and they diligently make their way across. After a long journey, they arrive, tired but safe, on the far shore of peace and security. Now, standing on the safe shore, what should they do with the raft that has served them so well? A foolish person might think, "This raft was incredibly useful. It saved my life. I should hoist it onto my back and carry it with me wherever I go." But a wise person would think differently. They would understand, this raft was essential for crossing the river, but now that I am on the land, it is no longer a tool, but a burden. So, with a sense of gratitude, they would push the raft back into the water or leave it on the bank and walk freely, unencumbered, into the beautiful landscape of the farther shore. The meaning is clear. The teachings, the practices, the path itself are the raft. They are practical tools designed for the specific purpose of crossing from the shore of suffering to the shore of liberation. They are to be used, not worshipped. We should not cling to them as a dogma, an ideology, or a badge of identity. Their value lies solely in their utility. The goal is to reach the other shore, not to become a lifelong carrier of rafts. This parable imbues the path with a spirit of pragmatic, non-dogmatic intelligence. This is the noble eightfold path. It is a complete and living system for transforming our lives from the inside out. It is a journey that begins not with a leap of faith, but with a single foundational step. Just as any great building requires a solid foundation, this path begins with the cornerstone upon which everything else is built, the very first element of wisdom, learning to see things not as we wish they were, but as they truly are. This is the beginning of the journey, the practice of right view. Our journey along the path begins here, with its first and most crucial factor, right view. It is placed at the beginning not because it is the simplest step, but because it is the foundation upon which all other progress depends. Right view is the compass that sets the direction for our entire spiritual life. Without it, our efforts, no matter how sincere, can lead us astray. Our good intentions can become confused, and our meditative practices can lack the clarity needed for true insight. It is like setting out on a long voyage. Before you begin rowing, you must first have an accurate map and a reliable compass. You must know where you are going, and which direction to face. Right view is that map and that compass. It is the lens through which we look at the world. And if the lens is distorted, everything we see will be warped. The practice of right view is the process of cleaning that lens, of correcting our vision so that we can begin to see ourselves and the world, not as we wish them to be, or as we fear them to be, but as they truly are. At its core, right view is the clear seeing of the fundamental law that governs our lives, the law of cause and effect. In the language of the Buddha, this is kamma, a word often burdened by misunderstanding. Kamma, or karma, as it is more popularly known, is not a system of cosmic justice handed down by an external judge. There is no celestial court weighing our good and bad deeds. The word kamma literally means action. The law of kamma is simply the natural, impersonal principle that every action has a consequence. More specifically, the Buddha clarified that the most important aspect of any action is the intention behind it. He said, "It is intention, I tell you, that is kamma." This is a profoundly empowering statement. It brings the entire dynamic of our destiny out of the hands of fate or gods and places it squarely within our own minds. The quality of our intention determines the quality of our experience. Actions born from intentions of generosity, kindness, and clarity will inevitably lead to results of peace, happiness, and well-being. This is not a reward, it is a natural outcome, like planting an apple seed and getting an apple tree. Conversely, actions driven by intentions of greed, hatred, and confusion will inevitably lead to results of pain, conflict, and suffering. This is not a punishment, it is the natural, unavoidable harvest of the seeds we have sown. Right view is the deep acceptance of this responsibility. It is the understanding that our happiness and our suffering are not random accidents. They are the direct result of the intentions we cultivate in our own hearts and minds, moment by moment. The most direct and complete definition of right view is the understanding of the Four Noble Truths. To see the world with right view is to apply this fourfold framework to all of your experiences. It is to see, first, that life inherently contains dissatisfaction and stress, the reality of dukkha. You see it not as a flaw or a tragedy, but as a fundamental characteristic of conditioned existence, like the fact that fire is hot. Second, you understand that this dissatisfaction has an identifiable cause, the internal thirst and clinging of tanha. You stop blaming the world, other people, or your circumstances for your unhappiness, and begin to look at the grasping nature of your own mind. Third, you hold the bright hope of Nirodha, the truth that an end to this dissatisfaction is possible through the quenching of that thirst. You do not fall into despair because you know that liberation is a real possibility. And fourth, you understand that the way to this liberation is the diligent practice of the Noble Eightfold Path, Magga. To hold this entire model in your mind, to use it as your primary tool for interpreting your life, is the very essence of right view. It is a shift from seeing life as a series of chaotic, unrelated events to seeing it as a coherent process with clear causes and clear solutions. In order to adopt this clear view, we must also be willing to recognize and let go of the wrong views that obscure our vision. The mind, in its confusion, tends to cling to distorted maps of reality. One of the most common wrong views is materialism, the belief that lasting happiness can be found through accumulating wealth, status, and sensual pleasures. We are saturated with this view from birth. It is the promise of advertising and the gospel of consumer culture. But right view sees the limitation of this. It understands the principle of the saltwater thirst, that chasing external pleasures can never fill an inner void. Another common wrong view is nihilism, the belief that life is ultimately meaningless and that our actions have no real consequences. This view cuts the very root of ethical living. If nothing matters, then kindness, compassion, and honesty are pointless. Right view counters this by affirming that our intentions are profoundly meaningful, that our actions shape our world and our consciousness in very real ways. A third wrong view is the belief in a fixed, permanent, unchanging self or soul that is separate from our experiences. This idea of a solid me at the center of everything is the source of our ego clinging, our fear of death, and our sense of alienation from others. Right view begins to see through this illusion, recognizing the self not as a static entity, but as a dynamic, flowing process of thoughts, feelings, and sensations. Right view is the middle way that navigates between these extremes, offering a perspective that is both hopeful and realistic, empowering and humbling. Let's make this practical. Imagine a person loses their job. This is a common modern-day arrow of suffering. The way this person interprets the event will determine the extent of their pain. A person operating from wrong view might think, "This is a catastrophe, my life is ruined. The world is unfair, and my boss is a terrible person. I am a complete failure." This viewpoint is a recipe for suffering. It creates feelings of anger, helplessness, and shame. It identifies the self completely with the job, "I am a failure," and sees happiness as entirely dependent on external factors. It is a view that leads directly to despair, the second arrow flying straight and true. Now, consider a person cultivating right view. They lose the same job. The initial pain, the first arrow, is still there. There is sadness, fear, and uncertainty. Right view does not deny this pain, but it frames it differently. This person might think, "This is a painful event. This is an instance of dukkha. It is stressful and difficult." They acknowledge the first noble truth. Then, they might reflect, "This event did not happen in a vacuum. It arose from many causes and conditions, the company's finances, the state of the economy, my own performance. And this situation, like everything else, is impermanent. It will change." They apply the wisdom of interconnectedness and impermanence. Then they turn inward, practicing the second noble truth. My suffering right now is not just from losing the job. It is intensified by my fear, by my craving for the security I have lost, by my attachment to the identity of being an employee there. By seeing the role of Tana, they regain a sense of agency. Finally, they might apply the third and fourth truths. An end to this suffering is possible. This is not the end of the world. This is an opportunity. I can use this time to reflect on what a truly right livelihood would be for me. I can practice patience and resilience. This difficulty can be part of my path. This perspective does not magically erase the hardship, but it transforms it from a catastrophe into a manageable, meaningful challenge. It prevents the firing of the second arrow. It turns a potential crisis into a catalyst for growth. This is the power of right view in action. It is the art of reframing our reality, of choosing the most skillful and compassionate interpretation of our lives, the one that leads not to despair, but to freedom. This is our compass. And now that our compass is pointing true north, we can begin to align our inner world to that direction, starting with the very thoughts that we choose to cultivate. If right view is the compass that shows us the true north of our spiritual journey, then right intention is the gentle hand that holds the rudder, steering our vessel moment by moment in that wise direction. It is the bridge between seeing things clearly and living in a way that reflects that clarity. Wisdom, without the intention to act upon it, remains a sterile and abstract concept. It is through the cultivation of right intention that the map becomes the path, that insight becomes character. Right intention, or samma sankappa, is about setting the climate of our own minds. It is the conscious and deliberate choice to align our motivations, our aspirations, and our inner chatter with the highest understanding we can muster. It is the art of transforming the mind from a reactive battlefield of conflicting impulses into a calm, coherent, and purposeful sanctuary. It is here, in the silent, invisible realm of our own intentions, that the real work of transformation begins. Perhaps the most helpful way to understand this practice is to imagine your mind as a garden. This garden is fertile soil, capable of growing anything. Throughout the day, seeds are constantly being blown into this garden by the winds of the world. Some seeds are for beautiful flowers, thoughts of kindness, generosity, and understanding. Other seeds are for invasive, thorny weeds, thoughts of anger, jealousy, greed, and resentment. As the gardener of your own mind, you cannot always control which seeds land in your soil. A critical comment from a colleague might plant a seed of resentment. An advertisement might plant a seed of craving. This is a natural part of life. However, you have complete and total power over the next step. You are the one who decides which seeds to water. You decide which seedlings to nurture and which weeds to gently pull. The practice of right intention is this sacred act of mental gardening. It is the conscious choice to water the flowers and to withhold water from the weeds. It is not a violent struggle, not an attempt to pave over the garden in concrete, but a patient, compassionate, and consistent process of cultivation. The Buddha pointed to 3 specific types of flowers that we should consciously cultivate in our mental garden. These are the 3 facets of right intention. The first is the intention of renunciation, or letting go. In a culture that celebrates acquisition and accumulation, the word renunciation can sound severe, as if it means giving up all worldly pleasures and living a life of stark deprivation. But its true meaning is far more subtle and liberating. It is not about renouncing the world, but about renouncing the compulsive clinging that causes us so much pain. It is the intention to loosen our desperate grip on things, people, and outcomes. It is the choice to find contentment in simplicity rather than in constant complexity. It is letting go of the need to be right in an argument. It is releasing an old grudge that has been poisoning our heart. It is relinquishing our attachment to a specific future, allowing life to unfold with more grace and ease. The intention of renunciation is the deep, quiet whisper that says, I can be happy with less. I can find peace right now without needing anything more. It is the antidote to the saltwater thirst of consumerism and ambition. The second flower to cultivate is the intention of loving kindness or goodwill. This is the deliberate choice to turn away from intentions of ill will, anger, and aversion. It is the active cultivation of a warm, friendly, and benevolent attitude towards all living beings, beginning, most importantly, with ourselves. So often, our inner landscape is dominated by criticism, judgment, and hostility. We replay arguments, nurse grievances, and wish ill upon those who have hurt us. The intention of loving kindness is a gentle rebellion against this habit. It is the practice of silently wishing others well, even those we find difficult. When a driver cuts us off in traffic, instead of feeding the seed of anger, we can choose to plant a different one. May you be safe on your journey. May you be free from stress. When we feel self-criticism arising, we can counter it with the intention, may I be happy, may I be healthy, may I be at peace. This is not about pretending to feel something we don't. It is about consciously choosing which mental direction to move in. It is the understanding that harboring ill will is like holding a hot coal in our hand with the intent of throwing it at someone else. We are the one who gets burned. The intention of loving kindness is the cool water that soothes these burns. The third flower in our garden is the intention of compassion or harmlessness. This is the intention to abstain from all acts of cruelty, violence, and aggression, both physical and mental. While loving kindness is the wish for others to be happy, compassion is the heart's response when it sees that they are not. It is the trembling of the heart in the face of suffering, and the sincere wish for that suffering to be relieved. This intention is the direct opposite of the indifference that allows us to look away from pain, or the cruelty that finds pleasure in it. Cultivating the intention of compassion means making a conscious effort to empathize with the struggles of others, to understand that, just like us, they are trying to find happiness and avoid pain. It motivates us to act in ways that alleviate suffering, whether through a kind word, a listening ear, or a helpful action. It also applies to ourselves. The intention of harmlessness means we stop berating ourselves for our mistakes and instead offer ourselves the same compassion we would offer a dear friend who is struggling. It is the firm but gentle commitment to do no harm, and where possible, to heal. There is a timeless story, told in many cultures, that perfectly illustrates the power of right intention. An old man is speaking to his grandchild. He says, "A terrible fight is going on inside of me. It is a fight between 2 wolves. One wolf," he explains, "is evil. He is anger, envy, sorrow, regret, greed, arrogance, self-pity, guilt, resentment, and ego. He continues, "The other wolf is good. He is joy, peace, love, hope, serenity, humility, kindness, benevolence, empathy, and truth." The grandchild thinks about this for a moment and then asks, "Grandfather, which wolf will win?" The old man replies simply, "The one you feed." This profound story is the practice of right intention in a nutshell. The two wolves live within all of us. The potential for greed and the potential for generosity, the potential for hatred and the potential for love are always present. The human mind is capable of both. The path is not about pretending the evil wolf doesn't exist. It does. The practice is about making a conscious, daily, hourly choice about which wolf you are going to feed. Every time you indulge in a resentful thought, you are feeding the dark wolf. Every time you entertain a fantasy of revenge, you are feeding the dark wolf. Every time you choose instead to cultivate a thought of forgiveness, to wish someone well, to let go of a grievance, you are feeding the wolf of light. Your inner world is not determined by fate. It is determined by your choices. It is determined by which wolf you feed. Therefore, the practice of right intention is the most intimate and foundational form of action. Before a single word is spoken, before a single muscle is moved, a choice has been made in the mind. That choice sets the trajectory for everything that follows. Our life is not the sum of the random events that happen to us. It is the sum of the intentions we have cultivated in response. By tending to our inner garden, by feeding the good wolf, we create a mind that is a source of peace, not conflict. We begin to shape an inner world that is a pleasant place to live. And when our inner world is aligned with wisdom and compassion, it is only natural that this harmony will begin to overflow. It will seek expression. And the first, most powerful way that our intentions manifest in the world is through the vibrations we create, through the words we choose to speak. As our inner world begins to shift through the cultivation of right view and right intention, that change inevitably seeks an outlet. The first and most powerful way our internal climate manifests externally is through the words we use. Speech is the bridge between our private mind and the shared world. With our words, we can build bridges of connection and understanding, or we can erect walls of division and fear. With our words, we can offer a healing balm that soothes a wounded spirit, or we can wield a weapon that inflicts fresh wounds. Every time we speak, we are creating a reality for ourselves and for those who listen. The practice of right speech, or samavacha, is the conscious and skillful use of this profound power. It is the art of ensuring that the words leaving our lips are in harmony with the wisdom and compassion we are cultivating in our hearts. It is a daily, moment-to-moment mindfulness of our most common and influential form of action. To guide us in this practice, the Buddha offered a beautifully simple yet comprehensive framework, sometimes thought of as the 4 gates of right speech. Before we speak, our words must pass through these gates. If they cannot pass, then silence is the more skillful choice. The first gate is truthfulness. Right speech is, first and foremost, true. This means abstaining from false speech, from lying. This is not just about avoiding blatant falsehoods. It extends to the subtle forms of dishonesty that we so often permit ourselves. It means not exaggerating to make a story more interesting, not making promises we have no intention of keeping, not speaking half-truths to avoid responsibility. It is a deep commitment to being reliable, to letting our word be our bond. When people know that what we say is true, a foundation of trust is built. More importantly, when we are committed to telling the truth to others, we are forced to be more honest with ourselves. We can no longer live in a world of self-deception. A mind committed to truth is a mind that is clear, stable, and at peace with itself. The second gate is that our speech must be unifying, not divisive. This means we abstain from slander, gossip, and any words that set one person against another. It is so tempting, in a moment of insecurity, to create a bond with someone by speaking ill of a third person. It creates a false sense of intimacy, a temporary alliance built on shared negativity. But this kind of speech is a poison. It sows seeds of discord and suspicion in our communities, our workplaces, and our families. It damages the reputation of others and, in the process, diminishes our own integrity. In our modern digital world, this practice is more crucial than ever. Divisive speech is the fuel of online mobbing, of political polarization, and of the rumor mills that churn on social media. The practice of right speech asks us to be a force for harmony. It asks us to speak in ways that encourage reconciliation, that highlight common ground, and that protect the good name of others, whether they are present or not. It is to refuse to participate in the cheap and destructive habit of talking behind people's backs. The third gate is that our speech must be gentle, not harsh. This means we abstain from words that are abusive, insulting, angry, or cruel. It is the commitment to let go of yelling, name-calling, belittling sarcasm, and any language intended to cause pain or humiliation. Harsh speech is the most direct form of verbal violence. It comes from a place of anger, and it lands with immediate impact, leaving bruises on the spirit that can last for years. This does not mean our speech must always be soft, or that we cannot deliver difficult feedback. It is possible to be firm and clear without being cruel. We can express disagreement without being disagreeable. The key is the intention behind the words. Are we speaking in order to attack and dominate, or are we speaking in order to communicate and resolve? The practice of gentle speech involves a deep mindfulness of our own emotional state. It means learning to pause when we feel anger rising, to take a breath instead of lashing out, and to wait until our mind is calm before we address a difficult situation. It is the choice to speak to others, even those with whom we are in conflict, with the basic respect that every human being deserves. The fourth and final gate is that our speech must be purposeful, not idle. This means we abstain from pointless chatter, from speech that is meaningless, trivial, and serves no useful function. At first, this might seem less important than avoiding lies or insults. But idle chatter is a significant drain on our mental energy. It is the endless complaining about the weather, the mindless gossip about celebrities, the constant stream of negativity about the state of the world that leads to no constructive action. It is the habit of filling every moment of silence with noise, because we are uncomfortable with stillness. This kind of speech muddies the mind, making it distracted and agitated. The practice of purposeful speech asks us to value our words and the attention of others. It encourages us to ask ourselves, is what I am about to say useful? Is it helpful? Is it necessary? Is this the right time to say it? This doesn't mean we cannot engage in light-hearted conversation or tell a funny story. Joy and humor are purposeful. It means we become more intentional, more mindful of how we use the precious resources of our time and attention, speaking in ways that are either helpful, kind, truthful, or at the very least, harmless. Sometimes, the most skillful speech of all is no speech. This is the fifth, unspoken gate, the gate of noble silence. In a world that is saturated with noise, we have forgotten the power and beauty of silence. We have come to see it as awkward or empty. But noble silence is not empty. It is full. It is full of listening, of awareness, of respect. When we are truly listening to another person, not just waiting for our turn to talk, not just formulating our rebuttal in our head, but giving them the full, spacious attention of our silent presence, we are offering them a profound gift. We are telling them, you matter, I hear you. Silence is also our greatest ally in moments of anger or conflict. The choice to not speak, to not add more fuel to the fire, is often the wisest and most compassionate action we can take. It allows emotions to cool and provides the space for clarity to emerge. Learning to be comfortable in silence is a revolutionary act in our noisy world. In our digital age, these principles are tested in new and challenging ways. The screen provides a veil of anonymity that can tempt us to abandon these gates altogether. False speech runs rampant as misinformation and curated, dishonest online identities. Divisive speech becomes online trolling and participating in public shamings. Harsh speech is amplified in the echo chambers of outrage, and idle chatter becomes the endless, mindless, scrolling through feeds, a digital form of mental static. The practice of right speech must extend to our keyboards. The mindful pause before we hit send or post is perhaps the most important spiritual practice of the 21st century. We must ask ourselves, is this email true? Is this comment unifying? Is this post kind? Is my time on this platform purposeful? Putting this into practice can transform our most difficult interactions. Consider a common conflict. Our partner or friend has done something that has hurt us. The unskillful, reactive approach, full of wrong speech, is to accuse, "You never listen to me. You are so selfish. You always do this." This language is harsh, divisive, and often an exaggeration. It immediately puts the other person on the defensive and closes the door to real communication. Right speech offers another way. It encourages us to speak from our own experience, using what are often called I statements. Instead of accusation, we offer vulnerability and truth. I have to share something that's on my mind. When I was talking earlier and saw you looking at your phone, I felt hurt and unimportant because it made me feel like you weren't listening to me. This statement is true. It is not harsh. It is not divisive, and it is purposeful. It opens a door for connection and understanding, rather than slamming it shut with blame. This is the healing power of right speech. It is a profound practice of compassion that can purify our relationships, calm our own minds, and bring a small measure of peace to a noisy world. When our words are aligned with our wholesome intentions, it is a natural step to align our bodies and our actions in the same way, creating a seamless integrity between what we think, say, and do. Having aligned our inner world through right view and right intention, and having purified the bridge to the outer world through right speech, we now arrive at the physical manifestation of our practice, right action. Our body is not merely a vehicle to carry our head from place to place. It is the instrument through which our intentions become reality. Every gesture, every task, every physical act is an opportunity either to deepen our confusion and cause harm, or to express our wisdom and compassion. Right action, or samma kamanta, is the practice of ensuring that our conduct in the world is a seamless expression of our highest values. It is the art of living with integrity, where there is no gap between what we believe, what we say, and what we do. It is about transforming our very way of being in the world into a form of meditation, a dance of mindfulness and care. The traditional framework for cultivating right action is a set of 5 guiding principles known as the 5 precepts. These are not rigid commandments handed down from on high to be followed out of fear. Rather, they are profound and practical training guidelines, undertaken voluntarily to help us navigate the complexities of life in a way that minimizes harm and cultivates inner peace. They are the essential guardrails that keep us on the path. The first principle is to abstain from taking life. At its most fundamental level, this is a commitment to not kill other human beings. It is the foundation of any civilized society and the baseline for all ethical conduct. But for the practitioner, this principle extends outward in a circle of compassion. It becomes a deep reverence for all sentient life. It asks us to recognize that every living creature, from the smallest insect to the largest mammal, shares with us a fundamental desire to live and to avoid pain. This doesn't necessarily mean everyone must adopt a specific diet, but it cultivates a profound sensitivity to the violence inherent in the world and encourages us to reduce our participation in it wherever we can. It is the intention to be a protector of life, not a destroyer of it. The second principle is to abstain from taking what is not given. This is the practice of refraining from stealing. Again, its meaning extends far beyond simply not robbing a bank or shoplifting. It is a commitment to radical honesty and respect for the property and boundaries of others. This includes not taking office supplies from work, not cheating on our taxes, not downloading copyrighted material without permission. It also includes more subtle forms of taking, such as taking up someone's time without consideration, or taking credit for work that someone else has done. At its heart, this principle is an antidote to the mind of greed. It is the practice of cultivating contentment with what we have and fostering a spirit of generosity rather than a mentality of acquisition. When we do not steal, we have nothing to hide, and our minds can be open and at ease. The third principle is to abstain from sexual misconduct. In our modern world, this principle is best understood as a commitment to conduct our sexual lives with awareness, kindness, and responsibility. It means refraining from any sexual act that causes harm to another person through coercion, manipulation, or deceit. It is about honoring the profound vulnerability that intimacy involves. It calls for unwavering respect for consent, for honesty with our partners, and for taking responsibility for the emotional and physical consequences of our actions. It is also about avoiding the use of sexuality as a mere tool for selfish gratification, an act of consumption that treats another person as an object for our pleasure. Right action in this area means striving for a sexuality that is an expression of genuine connection, mutual respect, and care, rather than another manifestation of craving and ego. The fourth principle, abstaining from false speech, is the very essence of right speech, which we have already explored. Its inclusion here, as a core precept of action, underscores the indivisible link between our words and our deeds. The Buddha considered speech to be a form of action, so powerful that it deserved its own place on the path and a central place in our code of conduct. The fifth and final principle is to abstain from intoxicants that cause heedlessness. This is a crucial guideline for anyone serious about training the mind. The precept is not a moral judgment against alcohol or other substances themselves. The focus is on their effect. They cause heedlessness, a clouding of mindfulness. The entire path we are walking is a path of cultivating awareness, clarity, and attention. Intoxicants do the exact opposite. They promote delusion, dull the mind, and strengthen our reactive, impulsive habits. They lower our inhibitions, often leading to the breaking of the other precepts. We may say things we regret or act in ways that are harmful. This precept is essentially about protecting our most precious resource, our own consciousness. It is a commitment to facing life with a clear and unobscured mind, so that we have the full capacity to practice the path and respond to life's challenges with wisdom rather than confusion. In our interconnected 21st century, the spirit of right action can be expanded even further. The principle of non-harming now calls us to consider the consequences of our actions on a global scale. Right action today can mean taking responsibility for our environmental impact by reducing our consumption, recycling, and making sustainable choices. It can mean taking social and economic responsibility by learning where our products come from and refusing to support industries that rely on exploitation or cruelty. Right action is the understanding that our small daily choices, when multiplied by millions, shape the world we live in. A famous Zen story beautifully illustrates the true spirit of right action. Two monks, one senior and one junior, were on a long journey. They came to a river where the ford was flooded with muddy water. A beautiful young woman in a fine silk kimono stood there, afraid to cross, lest she ruin her clothes. The junior monk, strictly observing the monastic rules that forbid touching a woman, walked past her without a word. The senior monk, however, looked at the woman, saw her distress, and without hesitation, he picked her up in his arms, carried her across the turbulent water, and gently set her down on the other side. He then continued his journey. The junior monk was scandalized. For the next several hours, as they walked, he fumed in silence. Finally, he could contain himself no longer. He burst out at his senior. "How could you do that? We monks are forbidden from even touching a woman, and you lifted one in your arms and carried her." The senior monk looked at his agitated companion, a gentle smile on his face. "Brother," he said calmly, "I left that woman by the river hours ago. Are you still carrying her?" This story perfectly captures the essence of right action. The senior monk performed a simple, compassionate act to relieve suffering, unconstrained by rigid rules. This was right action. But just as importantly, he did not cling to the act. He performed it and let it go completely, leaving his mind free and unburdened. The junior monk, on the other hand, did nothing physically, yet his mind was filled with judgment and agitation. He carried the woman in his mind for hours, creating his own suffering. Right action, therefore, is not just about doing good deeds. It is about acting with wisdom and compassion, and then letting go, free from attachment to the action or its results. It is the seamless harmony of doing what is needed with a mind that remains spacious and at peace. When we begin to apply this level of mindfulness to our general conduct, we are naturally led to examine the activity that occupies the majority of our waking life, the way we earn our living. Having established a foundation of right conduct in our speech and actions, we now turn to the domain that occupies the largest portion of our waking lives, our work. For most of us, our livelihood is not a small, isolated part of our existence. It is a vast landscape where we invest our time, our energy, and often our sense of identity. It is where we face some of our greatest challenges and find some of our deepest satisfactions. Because it is so central to our lives, our work cannot be separated from our spiritual path. It must become an integral part of it. Right livelihood, or sama ajiva, is the practice of weaving our spiritual values into the fabric of our professional lives. It is the fifth factor of the path and the final element of the pillar of ethical conduct. It calls us to earn our living in a way that is honest, ethical, and, above all, harmless. It transforms our work from a mere transaction for survival into a meaningful opportunity for practice and contribution. The guiding principle of right livelihood is beautifully simple: to engage in work that does not cause harm to oneself or to others. The Buddha, speaking to the society of his time, identified specific trades that were to be avoided because they directly profited from suffering. These included dealing in weapons, which facilitate violence, dealing in living beings for the purpose of slaughter, the business of raising and selling meat, dealing in intoxicants which cloud the mind, and dealing in poisons. While these categories may seem ancient, the underlying principle is timeless and profoundly relevant. The question we must ask ourselves is this: does my work, directly or indirectly, contribute to the suffering of the world, or does it contribute to its well-being? In our complex global economy, the lines can be blurry, but the inquiry itself is transformative. A modern list of livelihoods to be questioned might include work that profits from addiction, such as designing manipulative gambling apps or marketing addictive substances. It might include financial professions that prey on the vulnerable, or advertising that creates dissatisfaction and craving to sell products. It could be work that knowingly degrades the environment, or that relies on the exploitation of human labor. Right livelihood is the courageous practice of looking honestly at the consequences of our work and aligning our professional life with the intention of non-harming. This, of course, presents a significant challenge. In an imperfect world, not everyone has the luxury of abundant career choices. Many people work difficult jobs not out of passion, but out of necessity, simply to provide food and shelter for their families. The practice of right livelihood is not about creating a rigid hierarchy of good and bad jobs, nor is it a judgment on those whose choices are limited. This is where a more subtle and powerful aspect of the practice comes into play. While the what of our work is important, the how and the why are often even more so. The attitude and intention we bring to our work can transform any job into a spiritual practice. One could be a sanitation worker who performs their duties with immense mindfulness, care, and a spirit of service, understanding that they are contributing to public health and cleanliness. This is a profound expression of right livelihood. Conversely, one could be the director of a prestigious non-profit organization, but if their inner motivation is a craving for status, power, and public praise, their livelihood is tainted by wrong intention. The title on the business card is far less important than the quality of the heart that performs the work. Your workplace, whatever it may be, can be seen as your monastery, your dojo, your primary practice ground. The difficult colleague is not just an annoyance, they are an opportunity to practice patience and compassion. The stressful deadline is not just a burden, it is a chance to practice mindfulness under pressure, to notice the rising of anxiety without being consumed by it. A team meeting is not just a meeting, it is a laboratory for right speech, a place to listen deeply and speak truthfully and kindly. The temptation to cut corners or be dishonest is a chance to strengthen your commitment to right action. From this perspective, no job is devoid of spiritual potential. The practice lies in bringing your full awareness and your highest intentions to whatever task is in front of you, whether it is writing code, preparing food, caring for a child, or driving a bus. It is about infusing the mundane with a sense of the sacred through the quality of your own presence. This doesn't mean we become passive. Within this practice, there is still the vital role of making skillful choices, both large and small. The small choices happen every day. It is the choice to not participate in harmful office gossip. It is the choice to be honest with a client, even when a small lie might be easier. It is the choice to take the time to mentor a new employee or to offer a kind word to a struggling coworker. These seemingly minor acts of integrity and kindness are the very substance of right livelihood. They create ripples of well-being in our immediate environment. Then there are the large, life-defining choices. Imagine an advertising executive who is a master of their craft. They are offered a highly lucrative contract to create a campaign for a new brand of e-cigarettes targeted at young people. They know the product is addictive and harmful. They face a clear crossroads, a path of significant financial gain that is built on causing harm, or a path of integrity that may come with a financial cost. To refuse that contract is a powerful, resonant act of right livelihood. Or consider a brilliant software engineer with 2 job offers. One is from a company that designs intensely addictive and time-wasting mobile games. The other is from a company that creates innovative educational platforms for children with learning disabilities. The first job might offer a higher salary and more glamorous perks. But choosing the second is an act of aligning one's skills with one's values. It is the conscious choice to use one's life energy to alleviate suffering and create benefit, rather than to profit from delusion. Right livelihood is the final stone placed in the foundation of sila, of ethical living. When our words, our physical actions, and the way we spend our working day are all in harmony with our intention to do no harm and to be of benefit, we create a life of extraordinary integrity. This integrity has a profound effect. Outwardly, it builds trust and fosters healthy relationships. But inwardly, its effect is even more powerful. It generates a mind that is free from the agitation of guilt, remorse, and inner conflict. It creates a state of self-respect and ease. A mind that is not at war with itself is a mind that can become calm. A mind that is calm is a mind that can become concentrated. This solid, stable, and peaceful foundation of ethical conduct is the prerequisite for the next stage of our journey. We have cleared the land and built the strong foundation. Now we are ready to erect the structure of the mind itself. We turn from the world of outer action to the world of inner cultivation, from the pillar of sila to the pillar of samadhi, beginning with the wise and skillful application of our own energy, the practice of right effort, with the solid ground of ethical conduct, or sila, firmly established beneath our feet. We are now prepared to turn our attention fully inward. We move from the realm of outer action to the intricate, subtle, and powerful world of the mind itself. This marks our entry into the second pillar of the path, samadhi, or the training in mental discipline. The journey now becomes one of active and personal cultivation. This work requires energy. It requires a sustained, dedicated, and skillful application of our will. This vital, animating force of the path is called right effort. If sila is about clearing the field of stones and debris, right effort is the diligent, ongoing work of the farmer who tends that field day after day, season after season. It is the conscious and joyful participation in our own growth, the understanding that liberation is not something that happens to us, but something we actively move towards. It is the heart of the practice, the verb that brings the entire path to life. The very word effort can be misleading in our culture. We tend to associate it with struggle, with tension, with gritting our teeth and pushing through pain. We imagine a kind of heroic, forceful battle against our own weaknesses. But this is not the nature of right effort. The wisdom of this path lies in its balance, its middle way. Right effort is not a tense, aggressive striving, nor is it a passive, lazy complacency. The Buddha once gave a teaching to a monk named Sona, who had been practicing with such ferocious, unrelenting intensity that he was becoming discouraged and was on the verge of giving up. The Buddha, knowing this, asked him, "Sona, I hear that before you became a monk, you were a skilled musician, an expert at playing the lute. Is that true?" Sona replied that it was. The Buddha then asked, "Tell me, If the strings of your lute were tuned too tightly, would it produce a beautiful sound? No, Lord, Sona said, it would not. And if the strings were tuned too loosely, would it produce a beautiful sound? No, Lord, it would not. But what if the strings were tuned not too tightly and not too loosely, but just right, perfectly balanced? Then would it make a beautiful and melodious sound? Yes, Lord, it would. The Buddha then concluded, so it is, Sona, with spiritual practice. If your effort is too tense, it will lead to restlessness and agitation. If your effort is too slack, it will lead to laziness and dullness. You must cultivate an effort that is balanced, even, and sustainable. This is the spirit of right effort. It is a gentle, consistent, and intelligent application of energy, like the steady glow of a lamp, not the violent and brief explosion of a firework. This balanced effort is directed towards 4 specific aims. These are known as the 4 great efforts, and they provide a complete blueprint for the work of mental cultivation. They are the daily tasks of the diligent farmer tending the garden of the mind. The first is the effort to prevent the arising of unwholesome states that have not yet arisen. This is the work of wise prevention. The farmer, knowing his field, builds a fence to keep out animals that might trample his crops. In the same way, we learn to recognize the conditions that tend to give rise to negative states of mind, like anger, greed, or despair. If we know that scrolling through a particular social media feed always leaves us feeling envious and inadequate, the effort of prevention might mean choosing not to look at it. If we know that a certain topic of conversation with a family member always leads to a heated argument, the effort of prevention might mean skillfully steering the conversation in a different direction. This is not avoidance out of fear, it is a wise and compassionate protection of our own inner peace. It is the skill of recognizing a spark before it becomes a forest fire. The second task is the effort to abandon unwholesome states that have already arisen. Despite our best efforts at prevention, weeds will inevitably sprout in the garden. A flash of anger, a wave of jealousy, a surge of craving these thoughts and emotions will arise. The unskillful response is either to indulge the thought, feeding it and letting it grow, or to try and violently suppress it, pushing it down out of shame or fear. Right effort offers a middle way. When a negative state arises, we first simply recognize its presence without judgment. We can say to ourselves, there is anger. We see it clearly. We understand that it is an unwholesome state, that it is poisoned and will lead to pain. Then, with that clear seeing, we gently let it go. We withdraw our attention from it. We cease to water the weed. We might turn our attention to our breath or to a more wholesome thought. We don't enter into a battle with the anger. We simply remove its nourishment, and without our obsessive attention and mental chatter, the anger, like any temporary mental state, will naturally wither and pass away. The third task is the effort to arouse wholesome states that have not yet arisen. The gardener does not just pull weeds, he actively plants flowers. Similarly, there will be times when our mind feels dull, neutral, or lacking in positive qualities. In these moments, we don't have to simply wait for inspiration to strike. We can actively cultivate the good. If we are feeling uninspired, we can make the effort to read a passage from an uplifting book. If we are feeling disconnected, we can make the effort to call a friend and ask how they are doing. If we are feeling ungrateful, we can make the conscious effort to list 5 things in our life for which we are genuinely thankful. This is the practice of generating positive energy. It is the understanding that qualities like kindness, compassion, generosity, and joy are not just fleeting moods. They are skills that can be developed through conscious and repeated practice, just like strengthening a muscle. The fourth and final task is the effort to maintain and develop wholesome states that have already arisen. When the flowers in our garden have begun to bloom, our job is to tend to them so they can flourish. When a moment of genuine peace, a feeling of deep gratitude, or a wave of selfless love arises in our mind, this is a precious opportunity. The common habit is to quickly move on to the next thought, the next worry, the next plan. But right effort encourages us to stay. We notice the wholesome state and we savor it. We give it our full attention. We breathe with it, feel it in our body, and allow it to permeate our being. By doing so, we strengthen the neural pathways associated with these positive states, making them more likely to arise in the future. We are conditioning our mind to become a natural home for peace, clarity, and compassion. This is the joyful part of the practice, the harvesting of the fruits of our own cultivation. The spirit in which we undertake these 4 great efforts is paramount. This is not the grim discipline of a boot camp. It is a compassionate discipline. It is the kindness and patience you would offer a beloved child learning a new skill. There will be days when the weeds seem overwhelming. There will be times when our attention wanders for hours without our noticing. There will be moments when we feel we are making no progress at all. The effort is not in being perfect. The effort is in the gentle, persistent act of coming back. Every time you notice your mind has been lost in thought, and you gently guide it back to the present moment, that is a moment of success. Every time you catch yourself feeding a negative thought, and you choose to let it go, that is a victory. The path is forged not in grand, heroic leaps, but in these countless small, quiet moments of return. Right effort is the engine of our practice. It is the conscious choice to take responsibility for the quality of our minds. It is the steady, balanced, and joyful energy we bring to the task of freeing ourselves from suffering. But this energy cannot be applied blindly. In order to know which weeds to pull and which flowers to water, the gardener needs to be able to see the garden clearly. The effort to abandon the unwholesome and cultivate the wholesome requires a constant, moment-to-moment awareness of what is actually happening in the mind. This wise effort needs a guiding light. That light, that essential tool for illuminating our inner world so that we can work in it skillfully, is the next factor on our path, the celebrated and profound practice of right mindfulness. We have arrived at the very heart of the path, the practice that illuminates all the others, right mindfulness. If right effort is the will to cultivate our inner garden, right mindfulness is the clear, steady light that allows the gardener to work. Without this light, our efforts would be blind and fumbling. We would not know a weed from a flower, a harmful thought from a helpful one. Right mindfulness, or samma sati, is the art and science of paying attention. It is the practice of bringing our full, non-judgmental awareness to the present moment. It is not about stopping our thoughts or emptying our mind. It is about fundamentally changing our relationship to our mind. Instead of being carried away by the endless river of thoughts, feelings, and sensations, we learn to sit peacefully on the riverbank and simply watch the water flow by. This simple, yet profound shift in perspective is the key to unlocking a state of inner freedom and peace. For this practice, we need an anchor, something to hold us steady in the ever-shifting currents of the present moment. The most reliable and universally accessible anchor is the breath. Your breath is always with you, from the moment of your birth to the moment of your death. It is always happening right now, never in the past or the future. It is a neutral, rhythmic process that we can observe without getting caught up in elaborate stories. The practice can be as simple as this: finding a comfortable posture, closing your eyes gently, and bringing your attention to the physical sensations of your own breathing. You might feel the cool air entering your nostrils and the warm air leaving. You might notice the gentle rise and fall of your abdomen or your chest. Your only task is to rest your attention on these simple, physical sensations. Inevitably, your mind will wander. A thought about work will arise. A memory will surface. A sound will distract you. This is not a mistake. This is not a failure. This is simply what minds do. The moment you notice that your mind has wandered is a moment of perfect mindfulness. In that moment, without any scolding or frustration, you gently acknowledge where the mind went, and then you softly, kindly guide your attention back to the anchor of the breath. This process, repeated thousands of times, is the fundamental workout for the mind. Each time you return to the breath, you are strengthening your capacity for focused attention and compassionate self-awareness. This mindful awareness can be systematically applied to the whole of our experience, which the Buddha broke down into 4 foundations of mindfulness. This is a comprehensive map for exploring your own inner territory. The first foundation is mindfulness of the body. We begin here because the body is always present, always tangible. We practice feeling our body from the inside out. We notice the points of contact with the chair, the the feeling of our feet on the ground, the subtle sensations of warmth or coolness, tension or relaxation. This extends to our daily activities. We can practice walking meditation, feeling the complex and wonderful sensations of lifting, moving, and placing each foot. We can practice mindful eating, truly tasting our food, noticing its textures and flavors, instead of eating distractedly while watching a screen. This practice grounds us, pulling us out of the endless chatter of our heads and into the living reality of our physical being. The second foundation is mindfulness of feelings, or more accurately, feeling tones. At any given moment, every experience we have is tinged with a basic tone. It is either pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. The practice is to simply notice this raw tone without reacting to it. When a pleasant feeling arises, like the warmth of the sun on your skin, we are conditioned to grasp it and wish for it to never end. Mindfulness invites us to simply note pleasant and enjoy it without clinging. When an unpleasant feeling arises, like a backache or an anxious thought, our habit is to resist it and push it away. Mindfulness invites us to simply note unpleasant and allow it to be there without adding a layer of mental struggle. By observing these feeling tones as they constantly arise and pass away, we learn a profound lesson in impermanence and dramatically reduce our reactivity. The third foundation is mindfulness of the mind itself, or of consciousness. This is the practice of observing the state of our mind as a whole. Is the mind tired or energetic? Is it scattered or focused? Is it joyful or sad? Is it full of anger or full of love? We learn to recognize these mind states as if they were weather patterns. We are not judging the weather, simply observing it. Today may be cloudy, yesterday was sunny. By seeing that these states are not permanent fixtures of who we are, but temporary conditions passing through the vast sky of our awareness, we stop identifying with them. We are not an angry person. We are a person experiencing anger. This space between awareness and the mental state is the beginning of true freedom. The fourth foundation is mindfulness of mental objects, or dhammas. This is where mindfulness and wisdom become deeply intertwined. It is the practice of seeing our thoughts and experiences through the lens of the teachings we have been exploring. When a strong desire for a new possession arises, we don't just see it as a random thought. We can recognize it clearly. This is tanha, this is craving. When we worry obsessively about a future event, we can see it for what it is. A series of thoughts creating a story, not a reality. This practice allows us to see the inner workings of our own suffering and liberation in real time, transforming our meditation from a simple calming exercise into a profound investigation of the nature of our own minds. A classic story from the Zen tradition perfectly illustrates the fruit of this practice. A man is enjoying a quiet afternoon, meditating in his small boat on a misty lake. It is peaceful and still. Suddenly, with a loud thud, another boat bumps into his, jarring him from his calm. Immediately, a surge of anger rises within him. He thinks, "Who is this careless person? How dare they ruin my peace?" He opens his eyes, ready to shout at the offender, but when he looks, he sees that the other boat is completely empty. It had simply come loose from its moorings and drifted silently across the water, carried by the current. In that instant, all his anger vanishes. There is no one to be angry at. The boat is empty. How could he be angry at an empty boat? He is left only with the clear seeing of his own automatic reactive anger. The insight is this: all the boats that bump into us in life are empty. The critical comment from a spouse, the traffic jam on the way to work, the unexpected illness, these are impersonal events carried by the currents of cause and effect. Our suffering, our anger, our frustration does not come from the event itself. It comes from the story we instantly project onto it, the story of a blameworthy other who is doing this to me. Mindfulness is the practice of looking so clearly and so quickly that we see the boat is empty before we even have a chance to start shouting. It is the practice of seeing life as it is, without the layer of our own reactive storytelling. Right mindfulness is the cultivation of this clear, kind, impartial witness that watches our entire life unfold, both internal and external. It is this awareness that creates the crucial space between a stimulus and our response. A life lived on autopilot is a life of immediate reaction. A life lived with mindfulness is a life of conscious response. In that precious space between stimulus and response lies our growth, our wisdom, and our freedom. As we patiently practice staying present, the mind, which was once like a wild, scattered flock of birds, begins to settle. It becomes more collected, more stable, more unified. This growing stability, this natural gathering of our mental energy born from the gentle moment-to-moment practice of right mindfulness, is the natural gateway to the final factor of mental discipline. It prepares the mind for an even deeper state of calm and focus, the unified stillness of right concentration. We have journeyed through the foundational practices of ethical living and have begun the deep internal work of mental discipline. We have learned, through right effort, to apply our energy wisely, and through right mindfulness, to illuminate our present moment experience with clear, non-judgmental awareness. Now, we arrive at the culmination of this mental training, the eighth and final factor of the path, right concentration. This practice, known as Samma Samadhi, is about gathering the full force of our consciousness and unifying it. If mindfulness is a wide, gentle lantern that lights up the entire room, allowing us to see everything in it, concentration is the act of focusing that light into a single, powerful, and unwavering beam, capable of penetrating the deepest layers of reality. It is the pinnacle of mental discipline, a state of profound stillness and collectedness that provides the power for transformative insight. It is essential to understand the beautiful, synergistic relationship between mindfulness and concentration. They are not two separate activities, but rather two wings of the same bird, working together to create flight. Mindfulness is the expansive, open quality of awareness. It is the shepherd that notices when a sheep, our attention, has wandered away from the flock. Concentration is the quality of stability and focus. It is the ability of that sheep to remain peacefully in the pasture once it has been guided back. In our practice, when we are resting our attention on the breath, mindfulness is the faculty that notices, the mind has drifted into planning for tomorrow. Then, right effort provides the gentle energy to let go of that thought, and right concentration is the ability to place the attention back on the breath and have it remain there, steady and undistracted. A strong practice of mindfulness naturally develops our capacity for concentration. As we get better at noticing our distractions and letting them go, our mind spends more time on our chosen object of focus. Conversely, as our concentration deepens, our mind becomes less agitated and more stable, creating a perfect platform from which to practice an even clearer and more discerning mindfulness. They are partners in the dance of meditation. A classic metaphor for the practice of concentration is that of stilling a jar of muddy water. Our ordinary, untrained mind is like this jar just after it has been vigorously shaken. The water is murky, opaque, and turbulent. It is impossible to see through it. The swirling mud represents the 5 primary hindrances to a clear mind: sensual desire, which pulls us outward; ill will or anger, which agitates us; sloth and torpor, which make the mind dull and heavy; restlessness and worry, which scatter our energy; and skeptical doubt, which prevents us from settling into the practice. When the mind is filled with this mud, we cannot see ourselves or the world clearly. The practice of right concentration is the simple act of placing the jar on a steady surface and allowing it to be completely still. We do not try to force the mud to the bottom. We do not try to scoop it out. We simply create the conditions of stillness and non-interference. We do this by repeatedly, gently, and patiently returning our attention to a single object of meditation, most commonly the breath. Each time we return to the breath, we are allowing the jar to settle just a little bit more. Over time, with sustained practice, the mud of the 5 hindrances naturally, gradually begins to settle. The water begins to clear. The mind, free from its usual agitation, becomes bright, tranquil, and transparently clear. This clarity, born of stillness, is the essence of samadhi. As the mind becomes more and more settled and unified through this practice, it can enter into states of profound absorption and bliss known as the jhanas. This is a topic of deep and subtle study, but for our purposes, It is enough to know that these are natural states of well-being that arise from a pure and concentrated mind. They are characterized by powerful feelings of joy, rapture, contentment, and a deep, unshakable equanimity. The significance of these states is not that they are mystical experiences to be chased as an escape. Their importance is in what they teach us. They prove to us, through our own direct experience, that it is possible to feel a happiness and a peace that is far more profound and satisfying than anything the outer world of sense pleasures can offer. They are the definitive proof that true happiness is an inside job. By tasting these states, our craving for fleeting external pleasures naturally begins to wither away. Why would you chase after a sip of salt water when you have discovered a freshwater spring within your own heart? You may have already had a taste of this state of concentration in your own life, even without formal meditation. It is what modern psychologists call the flow state. Think of a musician completely lost in playing a piece of music, a rock climber fully absorbed in their movement on the cliff face, a writer whose words are pouring onto the page, or a surgeon performing a delicate operation. In these moments of deep absorption, their sense of a separate self seems to fall away. The division between the doer and the doing dissolves. Time seems to distort or disappear. There is a sense of effortless action, of being carried by a current, and the performance is often at its peak. This is a worldly form of samadhi. The difference is that these flow states usually happen by accident, dependent on specific external conditions. The practice of right concentration is the systematic training to be able to cultivate and enter this state of unified consciousness intentionally, at will, independent of outer circumstances. This brings us to the ultimate purpose of right concentration. Why do we work so hard to develop this powerful laser-like focus? It is not an end in itself. It is not an escape from life or its difficulties. A deeply concentrated mind, stable and clear, is the ultimate scientific instrument for self-discovery. It is the steady, high-powered microscope needed to see into the fundamental nature of our own existence. A scattered, agitated mind can only see the chaotic surface of things. A concentrated mind can penetrate to the very core of experience. This practice of developing concentration is known as samatha, or calm abiding meditation. Its purpose is to create the perfect platform from which to practice vipassana, or insight meditation. With the stable power generated by samatha, we can then turn our mindful attention to investigating the three fundamental characteristics of all experience: that all things are impermanent, anicca; that they are ultimately unsatisfactory or stressful, dukkha; and that they are devoid of any solid, separate, enduring self, anatta. Concentration provides the power, mindfulness directs that power, and wisdom is the liberating insight that results. Right concentration completes the great pillar of samadhi, the training of the mind. We have now walked through the foundations of ethical conduct, sila, which brings harmony to our outer world, and we have journeyed through the practices of mental discipline, samadhi, which brings stability and power to our inner world. We now possess a truly remarkable instrument. Our mind is no longer our master, a chaotic tyrant pulling us from one reaction to the next. It has become our servant, a finely tuned tool that is calm, bright, unified, and obedient. With this extraordinary instrument finally in hand, we are now prepared to approach the final pillar of the path, the pillar of wisdom, or paññā. We are ready to perform the most profound and liberating investigation of all, to turn this sharp, clear light of our concentrated mind upon the very foundation of our suffering, the deeply ingrained idea of who we think we are. We are ready to explore the mystery of the self. We now stand at the threshold of the final pillar of the path, the pillar of wisdom, or paññā. We have quieted our lives through ethical conduct and sharpened our minds through mental discipline. We have forged a powerful instrument of awareness, a mind that is calm, clear, and concentrated. Now, we are ready to use this instrument to perform the most delicate and liberating surgery of all, an investigation into the very nature of who we think we are. This exploration takes us to the deepest root of our suffering, the most fundamental illusion upon which our entire world of anxiety and craving is built. This is the ingrained, visceral, and unquestioned feeling of being a solid, separate, and permanent I. The teaching that addresses this is perhaps the most challenging, counterintuitive, and ultimately freeing in the Buddha's entire map of the human mind. It is the teaching of anatta, or non-self. This is not a denial of our existence. You are here, reading these words, living, breathing. Anatta is not a nihilistic claim that you do not exist. It is a profound insight that you do not exist in the way you think you do. It suggests that the self we so fiercely protect and promote is not a solid entity, but a beautiful, dynamic, and empty process. To begin this investigation, let's imagine ourself as a large corporation, me, incorporated. We have a deep conviction that somewhere in this corporation, there is a CEO, a central controller, a permanent entity that is the boss, the real me. So, with our newly sharpened mindfulness, we are going to conduct a thorough audit. We will go through every department of this corporation, looking for this elusive CEO. The Buddha divided our corporate structure into 5 main departments, known as the 5 aggregates, or skandhas. These 5 aspects, working together, create the entire experience of being a person. First, we investigate the department of the physical body, or rupa. Is my body the real me? At first glance, this seems plausible, but let's look closer. My body is in a constant state of flux. It is aging, changing, and will one day grow sick and die. It is composed entirely of non-me elements: the food I ate, the water I drank, the air I am breathing. My hair and nails grow and are cut away. I could lose a limb, and I would still be here. The body, then, is more like a vehicle I inhabit, or a piece of property I manage. It is something I have, but it is not who I fundamentally am. It is a process, not a permanent entity. So, the CEO is not in the physical department. Next, we visit the department of feelings or sensations. Vedana. Is I my feelings? This is even less plausible. Feelings are like the weather, constantly changing. One moment there is happiness, the next sadness, the next boredom. If I were my happiness, I would cease to exist when sadness arrives. Feelings are fleeting, impersonal events that arise in consciousness, in response to contact with the world. They are experiences that pass through us, but they cannot be the stable core of who we are. The CEO is not in the feelings department. We move on to the department of perception, sanya. This is the department that recognizes, labels, and interprets sensory input. It's the faculty that sees a collection of colors and shapes and labels it tree, or hears a sound and labels it danger. Are my perceptions the real me? Our perceptions are entirely dependent on our sense organs and our past conditioning. They are often faulty. 2 people can witness the same event and have completely different perceptions of it. Perception is a function, a mental activity. It is a process of making sense of the world, but it cannot be the unchanging self who is doing the perceiving. The CEO is not here either. Now we come to a very likely suspect, the bustling department of mental formations, sankhara. This is the home of our thoughts, our beliefs, our opinions, our habits, our moods, our desires, our fears. This is the department that we most closely identify with. I am my thoughts, my personality, my character. But let's look with our clear awareness. Are you your thoughts? Thoughts arise and pass away, unbidden, often chaotically. You can have a noble thought one moment and a petty one the next. Which one is the real you? Our opinions and beliefs change over time. The political beliefs you held 10 years ago may be different now. Who you were then, is it who you are now? Our habits and character traits are malleable. They can be changed with effort. These mental formations are the busiest and noisiest department in the corporation, but they are just activities, processes, and patterns. They are not a solid, unchanging CEO. They are the activity of the mind, not the essence of the mind. Finally, we go to the very top floor, the executive suite of consciousness itself, vijnana. Surely, this raw awareness must be the real me, but the Buddha invites us to look even more closely. Consciousness, he taught, is not a monolithic, independent entity. It is a dependent, flickering process. It always arises in relationship to something else. There is eye consciousness, which arises when the eye organ meets a visual form. There is ear consciousness, which arises when the ear organ meets a sound. There is mind consciousness, which arises when the mind organ meets a thought. There is no independent, pure consciousness that exists by itself. It is a series of discrete, dependent moments of knowing. It is more like a series of flashes from a light bulb than a continuous, self-luminous sun. So even here, in the department of pure awareness, we find no permanent, independent, controlling CEO. A famous dialogue between the sage Nagasena and King Milinda illustrates this perfectly. When they meet, the king asks Nagasena his name. Nagasena replies that he is known as Nagasena, but that this is just a name, a convenient designation, and that no permanent person can be found. The king, a clever man, is skeptical. He points to Nagasena's chariot and begins to question him. "Is this chariot the wheels?" he asks. "No, your majesty," Nagasena replies. "Is it the axle, the frame, the reins?" To each question, the king must answer no. Then, the king challenges, "Is the chariot all these parts combined?" "No, your majesty." "Is it something outside of these parts?" "No, your majesty." Nagasena then smiles and says, "Your majesty, just as the word chariot is a convenient name we give to an assembly of parts, so the name Nagasena is a convenient name we give to the assembly of the five aggregates. There is no essential chariot entity to be found apart from its parts, and there is no essential self to be found apart from the ever-changing processes of body and mind. What is the benefit of this seemingly intellectual deconstruction? The freedom it brings is immense. When we see through the illusion of a solid self, the entire project of ego defense begins to collapse. If there is no fixed self to protect, we become less sensitive to praise and blame, less obsessed with our reputation, less arrogant in our success, and less devastated by our failure. The fear of death, which is at its core the fear of the annihilation of this precious me, loses much of its power. How can you fear the destruction of something that you have seen was never a solid thing to begin with? And perhaps most beautifully, as the hard, artificial boundary between me and you begins to soften, a natural and effortless compassion arises. We see that your struggle and my struggle, your joy and my joy, are not fundamentally separate. They are part of the same vast, interconnected web of life. We are no longer isolated, defended castles. We are flowing, interconnected rivers. The teaching of anatta is not a loss. It is the letting go of the heaviest burden you have ever carried, a burden you may not have even known you were carrying. The exhausting, lifelong project of constructing, maintaining, and defending the fictional character of me. It is an invitation to relax, to let go of this anxious contraction, and to open up to the vast, mysterious, and liberating flow of life as it is. This profound insight into the selfless, process-like nature of our being sets the stage perfectly for our next exploration. For if we are not a solid thing, but a process, what is the fundamental nature of all processes? It is that they are constantly, ceaselessly, and unstoppably changing. Having turned the bright, steady light of our concentrated awareness inward, we have begun to see through the illusion of a solid, separate self. We have discovered that what we call me is not a static entity, but a flowing, selfless process. This insight naturally leads us to our next great exploration. If we are a process, what is the fundamental nature of all processes, both within us and outside of us? The answer is the most obvious, yet most profoundly resisted, truth of existence. It is the truth of anicca, or impermanence. It is the simple, observable fact that everything changes. Nothing is permanent. Nothing stays the same. From the vast, spiraling galaxies to the thoughts flickering through our own minds, everything is in a constant state of flux. Life is not a collection of solid things, but a single, flowing river. And our choice is simple. We can learn to swim with the current, or we can exhaust ourselves trying to build a dam in the middle of it. All our suffering comes from this resistance, this futile attempt to hold onto the riverbank while the water rushes by. We do not need to take this truth on faith. We can see it for ourselves, right now. Bring your awareness to your own breath. Notice how each inhalation arises, fills the lungs, pauses for a moment, and then gives way to an exhalation. which itself dissolves into stillness before the next breath begins. No two breaths are exactly the same. Each one is a small, complete drama of birth, life, and death. Now, turn your awareness to the sensations in your body. Perhaps there is an itch on your arm. If you watch it closely, you will see it arise, intensify, and eventually fade away. A feeling of warmth in your hands gives way to coolness. A pang of hunger comes and goes. The body is not a solid, static statue. It is a shimmering, vibrating field of constantly changing sensations. Look at your own mind. Where is the thought you were thinking just a moment ago? It is gone. Where is the emotion of happiness or boredom you felt this morning? It has been replaced by something else. Our inner world is a relentless cascade of arising and passing thoughts, moods, and feelings. To observe our own direct experience is to have an undeniable, moment-to-moment proof of anicca. This same law governs the world around us. Look at a photograph of yourself from 10 or 20 years ago. The cells in that body have all been replaced. The thoughts and beliefs in that mind have shifted and evolved. Are you the same person? In some ways, yes. In many ways, no. You are a continuation, but you are not identical. You are a process in motion. We see it in the turning of the seasons, as the vibrant green of summer gives way to the fiery decay of autumn, the stark stillness of winter, and the new birth of spring. We see it in our relationships, which are never static, but are living, evolving dynamics that require constant care and attention. We see it in the cities we build, which rise and fall over centuries. Even the mountains, which seem to be symbols of permanence, are slowly but surely being worn down by the wind and the rain. There is nothing in this entire universe, from the subatomic to the cosmic, that you can point to and say, this will not change. If impermanence is such an obvious and universal law, why does it cause us so much pain? The suffering comes not from the fact of change itself, but from our deep-seated psychological resistance to it. The source of our struggle is our clinging, our tanha. Our minds have a fundamental habit of trying to freeze the river. When we experience something pleasant, a moment of joy, a period of success, a loving relationship, a state of good health, immediate, instinctual reaction is to grasp it. We think, this is wonderful, I want this to last forever. We build our entire sense of security around these temporary states, trying to make them permanent fixtures in our lives. But life, being a river, cannot be frozen. The vacation inevitably ends. Our youth inevitably fades. Relationships evolve or break apart. Success can turn to failure. By clinging to what is inherently unclingable, we set ourselves up for inevitable disappointment, anxiety, and grief. Our attachment to the pleasant is a constant source of low-grade fear, the fear that we will lose what we have. The other side of this coin is our aversion to unpleasant change. Just as we cling to the pleasant, we violently resist the unpleasant. We want our health to be permanent, so we live in fear of sickness. We want our loved ones to be with us forever, so we are terrified of loss. We want our comfort and security to be stable, so we are filled with anxiety about economic change or personal misfortune. We stand in the river of life and shout no at the waves we do not like. This resistance, this pushing away of reality, creates immense tension, stress, and suffering. The pain of the initial event, the first arrow, is compounded 1,000 times over by our mental war against it. The second arrow, impermanence is not the problem. Our fight against impermanence is the problem. And yet, hidden within this difficult truth is a profound gift. The law of anicca, which can seem so cruel when we lose something we love, is our greatest source of solace when we are in pain. Because everything changes, no suffering is permanent. When you are in the depths of grief, it can feel as though the pain will last forever. But anicca whispers, this too shall pass. The clouds will part, the wound will heal, the sadness will soften. When you are facing a difficult illness, a financial crisis, or a period of deep depression, the wisdom of impermanence is a lifeline of hope. It is the certain knowledge that the present moment, no matter how unbearable, is not a permanent destination. The river is always moving. Furthermore, impermanence is the very basis of all growth, learning, and transformation. If things were permanent and unchanging, we would be trapped forever in our present state. Our ignorance would be permanent. Our bad habits would be permanent. Our sorrows would be permanent. There would be no possibility of becoming a kinder, wiser, or more compassionate person. The fact that things change is what makes liberation possible. Every moment is a new moment, a chance to let go of the old and begin again. Impermanence is the open door of possibility. The practice, then, is to learn how to live in harmony with this truth. Think of how you appreciate a beautiful sunset. You do not try to stop the sun from sinking below the horizon. You do not rage against the coming of the night. You sit, you watch, and you appreciate the magnificent, fleeting beauty of the moment, precisely because you know it will not last. You allow it to touch you, and you allow it to go, with a sense of gratitude for having witnessed it. This is the model for a wise relationship with all of life. We can love a person with our whole heart, not by clinging to them, but by appreciating the precious, temporary gift of their presence in our lives. We can engage with our work passionately, not for a permanent result, but for the joy of the process itself. We can experience happiness fully, not by trying to trap it, but by savoring it like a beautiful sunset, knowing it is a temporary visitor. When we stop fighting the river, we discover a new way of being. We learn to dance with the current. This deep acceptance of the flowing, selfless, and ever-changing nature of reality can lead to a profound shift in our hearts. When we see that we are not separate from this flow, and that all beings are fellow travelers in this river of change, the walls of the small self can dissolve, opening the door to a vast and unconditional love for all that is. As we rest in the wisdom of non-self and impermanence, a profound shift can begin to occur in the landscape of the heart. When we truly see that we are not a fixed, isolated entity, but a flowing part of a vast, interconnected process, the very foundation of fear, selfishness, and alienation begins to crumble. The hard shell of the ego, which spends its life defending a fictional territory, starts to become porous and soft. In this new, open space, a different kind of emotional intelligence can blossom. It is the intelligence of the heart, a warmth that radiates outward without condition. This is the practice of metta, a Pali word most often translated as loving kindness. Metta is not the sentimental, conditional, and often possessive love that we see in popular culture. It is not a love that says, "I will love you if you meet my needs." It is an unconditional, boundless goodwill. It is a simple, sincere, and powerful wish for the well-being of all living things. The practice of metta is the cultivation of this inner radiance. It is like becoming the sun, which shines its warmth down on everyone and everything, without discrimination on the beautiful flower and the thorny weed, on the saint and the thief, on our dearest friends, and on our most difficult adversaries. The journey of metta begins in the most courageous and often the most challenging place, with ourselves. In a culture that often mistakes self-criticism for a virtue, the idea of directing love towards oneself can feel awkward, selfish, or even arrogant. But the wisdom of the path is clear. You cannot pour water from an empty cup. If our own heart is a desert, we have no living water to offer another. So often, we are our own worst enemy, our minds filled with a relentless inner critic that judges our every flaw. The practice of metta meditation is a direct antidote to this habit. It begins by gently, patiently, turning the warmth of kindness inward. The practice can be guided by simple, silent phrases. You can sit quietly, place a hand over your heart, and softly repeat these intentions. May I be safe. May I be healthy in body and in mind. May I be happy and content. May I live my life with ease. At first, this may feel artificial. The inner critic may even mock the effort, but we persist gently. We are planting new seeds in the garden of the mind. By offering ourselves this unconditional goodwill, we are creating the inner resources of strength, stability, and self-acceptance that are the absolute foundation for any genuine love we hope to extend to others. It is not narcissism, it is nourishment. Once we have established a baseline of kindness towards ourselves, we begin to expand the circle of metta outwards, in stages. First, we bring to mind a benefactor, a respected teacher, or a dear friend, someone for whom we feel a natural and effortless affection. We hold their image in our mind, we feel the warmth of our appreciation for them, and we direct the phrases of metta towards them. May you be safe, may you be healthy, may you be happy, may you live with ease. We allow our heart to overflow with this genuine wish for their well-being. This stage is usually pleasant and easy, as it taps into a love that is already present. Next, we stretch our capacity for goodwill. We bring to mind a neutral person. This might be the cashier at the grocery store, the person who delivers our mail, or someone we see on our daily commute but do not know. We rarely give such people a second thought, but now we hold them in our awareness and recognize their basic humanity. Just like us, they want to be happy. Just like us, they have hopes and fears. And so, we offer them the same sincere wishes. May you be safe, may you be healthy and happy, may you live your life with ease. In this simple act, a stranger is transformed from an object in our background into a fellow subject of experience, deserving of happiness. The circle of our heart expands. Then comes the most transformative and challenging stage of the practice. We bring to mind a difficult person. This is someone with whom we have conflict, someone who has hurt us, or someone whose actions we strongly disapprove of. The practice here is not to condone their harmful actions or to force ourselves to like them. It is a profound act of spiritual maturity for the sake of our own freedom. We recognize that this person's harmful actions arise from their own confusion and suffering. A truly happy and peaceful person does not cause harm. So, understanding this, we try, as best we can, to extend the wish of metta. May you be free from your own anger. May you find true peace. May you be happy. This practice is a powerful medicine. It directly frees our own heart from the prison of resentment and the poison of hatred. It is the understanding that holding on to anger is a burden that only we are carrying. Finally, we allow the circle to become boundless. We radiate metta in all directions: front, back, left, right, above, and below. We extend it to all beings without exception, to our friends, our enemies, our families, to people in other countries, to animals, to all beings seen and unseen, in all realms of existence. We hold the entire world in our heart and suffuse it with the simple, powerful wish: may all beings everywhere be safe. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be happy and free. This is the cultivation of a truly limitless heart. The power of metta is that it is the direct antidote to anger, hatred, and ill will. The mind cannot hold two diametrically opposed states at the same time. You cannot genuinely wish for someone's happiness while simultaneously being consumed by rage against them. When you feel anger arise, the practice of metta is not to suppress it, but to gently and deliberately replace it. It is like walking into a dark room and turning on a light. You do not need to fight or struggle with the darkness. The presence of the light simply dissolves it. In the same way, the presence of the warm, unconditional light of metta simply dissolves the cold darkness of anger and resentment. There is a powerful story from the life of the Buddha that illustrates the incredible force of metta. The Buddha's jealous cousin, Devadatta, tried many times to harm him. In one attempt, he arranged for the keepers of a fierce wild elephant named Nalagiri to get the animal drunk on intoxicants and then release it onto the narrow lane where the Buddha was walking. As the enraged, drunken elephant charged forward, people screamed and fled in terror. The Buddha's faithful attendant, Ananda, tried to step in front of him to shield him with his own body, but the Buddha gently moved him aside and stood his ground, calm and unafraid. He looked at the raging animal not with fear or aggression, but with a heart completely open and overflowing with pure, unconditional loving kindness. As the elephant thundered closer, it entered the field of this immense, peaceful energy. A strange thing happened. The elephant's steps began to slow. Its enraged trumpeting softened. Its eyes, which had been red with fury, grew gentle. The intoxicating effects of the alcohol and its own rage seemed to melt away under the power of the Buddha's metta. It walked peacefully to the Buddha, knelt down, and allowed the Buddha to gently stroke its forehead. This story shows that metta is not a weak, passive, or sentimental emotion. It is a tangible and powerful force, a spiritual radiance that has the power to disarm hostility, to protect from harm, and to transform conflict into peace. The practice of metta, then, is the intentional softening of the heart. It is the conscious decision to meet the world not with a closed fist of fear and suspicion, but with an open hand of generosity and goodwill. As we develop this boundless wish for all beings to find happiness, a natural and beautiful question arises in a compassionate heart. What is our response when we see that beings are not happy, when we are confronted with their very real pain and suffering? This is where the radiant warmth of metta blossoms into its active and engaged twin. The wish for others to be happy evolves into the urgent wish for them to be free from their suffering. This is the birth of karuna, or compassion. As the radiant warmth of loving kindness, or metta, begins to permeate our being, we learn to meet the world with an open and benevolent heart. We hold the sincere wish for all beings to find happiness and peace. But as we look at the world with this newly opened heart, we are inevitably confronted with a stark reality. So many beings are not happy. We see suffering, confusion, pain, and struggle everywhere, in others and in ourselves. The heart that has been softened by metta does not turn away from this truth. Instead, it is moved by it. This is the birth of karuna, or compassion. If metta is the sun's warm light, karuna is the gentle rain that falls on a dry and thirsty land. The word itself suggests a trembling of the heart in the face of suffering. It is an empathetic resonance, a deep and visceral feeling of connection to the pain of another, coupled with the strong aspiration to see that pain relieved. It is not sadness or despair. It is a powerful, active, and engaged energy that says, "Your suffering matters to me." It is vitally important to distinguish true compassion from its near enemy, pity. Pity, on the surface, can look like caring, but it comes from a place of separation and superiority. Pity looks down from above. It says, "Oh, you poor thing, your life is so difficult. I am so glad that I am not you." Pity reinforces the ego and creates a wall between the observer and the one who suffers. It can feel condescending and disempowering to the person who receives it. Compassion, on the other hand, is born from a sense of radical equality and interconnectedness. It arises from the wisdom of non-self, the understanding that the line between my suffering and your suffering is ultimately an illusion. Compassion meets the other at eye level. It says, "I see your pain, and I know this feeling. It touches my heart. We are in this together." Pity creates distance. Compassion closes it. Pity is a judgment. Compassion is a connection. For many of us, the most challenging and necessary place to apply this practice is not to others, but to ourselves. We live with a relentless inner critic, a harsh judge who sits on the throne of our mind, constantly pointing out our flaws, replaying our mistakes, and whispering that we are not good enough. This voice is the source of so much of our anxiety, shame, and depression. Self-compassion is the direct antidote to this inner tyrant. It is the practice of treating ourselves with the same kindness, care, and understanding that we would offer to a dear friend who was going through a hard time. This is not self-pity, nor is it a way of making excuses for our behavior. It is a courageous recognition of our own humanity. It is the understanding that making mistakes, failing, and feeling pain are universal parts of the human experience, not signs of some personal, unique defect. The practice of self-compassion can be understood through three core components. The first is self-kindness, as opposed to self-judgment. When you make a mistake, instead of berating yourself with harsh language, you offer yourself words of gentle encouragement. You might say to yourself, "That was really difficult, and I feel disappointed, but I did the best I could. It's okay to be imperfect." The second component is recognizing our common humanity, as opposed to feeling isolated by our failure. Our inner critic loves to tell us that we are the only one who struggles this much. Self-compassion reminds us that everyone suffers, everyone fails, everyone feels inadequate at times. This realization connects us to others rather than separating us. The third component is mindfulness, as opposed to over-identification. This is the ability to hold our painful feelings in a spacious, balanced awareness. We acknowledge the pain, the shame, or the embarrassment, without letting it become our entire identity. We can say, I am experiencing a feeling of failure, which is very different from the thought, I am a failure. Let's imagine you make a significant error on a project at work. The voice of the inner critic immediately screams, I'm an idiot. I'm so stupid. Everyone is going to find out, and I'll lose my job. This leads to panic and shame. The voice of self-compassion would respond differently. It would say, wow, that was a painful mistake. I feel so embarrassed and anxious right now. It acknowledges the feeling with mindfulness. Then, it offers kindness. It's okay, you're human, and humans make mistakes. This feeling is difficult, but it will pass. Finally, it connects to common humanity. Many smart, capable people have made mistakes like this before. This doesn't define my worth. From this calm, kind, and balanced place, we are far more likely to be able to take constructive action to fix the mistake and learn from it. This points to the true nature of karuna. It is not a passive emotion, but a powerful motivation for skillful action. Compassion is the engine of altruism. It is what moves us from simply feeling sorry for someone to actually doing something to help. This action does not have to be grand or heroic. It can be as simple as truly listening to a friend who is heartbroken without trying to fix them or offer advice. It can be the act of leaving a generous tip and a kind note for a server who seems overwhelmed and stressed. It can be volunteering your time for a cause you believe in, or simply offering your seat on the bus to someone who looks weary. The practice of compassion is the practice of looking at the world and asking, where can I help? Where can I alleviate a burden? This intention transforms our interactions. When you encounter someone who is being rude or aggressive, the reactive mind feels anger and hostility. But a compassionate mind has another option. It can wonder, what suffering might be causing this person to act this way? This question doesn't excuse harmful behavior, but it profoundly changes our inner experience. It protects our own heart from being poisoned by anger and allows us to respond to the situation with greater wisdom and clarity. In the Buddhist tradition, the ultimate embodiment of this principle is the Bodhisattva, an enlightened being who, out of boundless compassion, postpones their own final nirvana in order to remain in the world and help all other beings find freedom from suffering. This ideal represents compassion in its most vast and courageous form. As we cultivate a heart that is wide open with loving kindness and actively engaged through compassion, we become a more positive and healing presence in the world. Our relationships deepen and our own inner life becomes richer. However, a heart that is so open can also be vulnerable. If we are constantly taking in the pain of the world without a balancing factor, we risk being consumed by it. We can experience emotional burnout, despair, or fall into a state of idiot compassion, where our well-intentioned desire to help leads us to act in unskillful or enabling ways. To protect our open heart and to ensure that our compassion is guided by wisdom, we need to cultivate one more essential quality. We need the strength, stability, and profound balance of a mind that can love deeply and care completely without losing its own center. We need the cool, clear perspective that can stand in the midst of the fire of life without being burned. This necessary, balancing quality is upekkha, or equanimity. We have opened our hearts with the radiant warmth of loving kindness, and we have learned to respond to pain with the active trembling of compassion. Our hearts are now engaged with the world, connected and caring. But this very openness brings with it a new challenge. To care so deeply is to be exposed to the full force of the world's joy and its sorrow. Without a stabilizing anchor, a heart so open could be shattered by the sheer intensity of life. We risk burnout from our compassion, or being carried away on the euphoric highs and devastating lows of our empathy. To protect our open heart and to ensure our wisdom remains clear, we must cultivate the fourth and final of these sublime states of mind. This is upekkha, or equanimity. If loving kindness and compassion are the great sails that catch the winds of life, equanimity is the deep, heavy keel that keeps the ship stable, no matter how fierce the storm. It is a profound and unshakable balance of mind. It is crucial to understand, from the very beginning, what equanimity is not. It is not indifference, apathy, or cold detachment. Indifference comes from a place of fear or aversion. It is the heart shutting down to protect itself. It says, "I don't care," and it creates distance. Equanimity, on the other hand, is born from wisdom and deep caring. It is the heart remaining wide open, yet utterly stable. It is the capacity to carefully, to love deeply, and to act compassionately without being attached to the outcome. Indifference is a stone, cold and unfeeling. Equanimity is like a great mountain. The mountain is fully present to all the changing weather. It is warmed by the sun, washed by the rain, and blasted by the wind. Yet through it all, the mountain remains steadfast, solid, and unmoved. To cultivate equanimity is to develop this mountain-like stability in our own minds. It is the peace that can hold all of life's joys and sorrows in a vast, spacious, and loving embrace. The practice of equanimity is the practice of learning to meet the inevitable ups and downs of life with grace and composure. In the Buddhist teachings, these are known as the 8 worldly winds, which blow constantly upon all of us. They come in 4 pairs of opposites. The first pair is pleasure and pain. Our lives are a constant flow of pleasant and unpleasant physical and emotional sensations. The second is gain and loss. We gain and lose material possessions, wealth, and opportunities. The third is praise and blame. People will speak well of us, and they will speak ill of us. Our reputation will rise and fall. The fourth pair is fame and disrepute. We experience moments of public recognition and moments of being ignored or forgotten. The untrained mind is like a weather vane, spun around helplessly by these 8 winds. We desperately cling to pleasure, gain, praise, and fame, living in constant anxiety that we will lose them. And we violently resist pain, loss, blame, and disrepute, living in constant fear that they will arrive. Our happiness is completely dependent on which way the wind is blowing at any given moment. This is a state of utter bondage. Equanimity is the path to freedom from this reactivity. It is the wisdom that recognizes all 8 of these conditions for what they are: impermanent, impersonal, and beyond our ultimate control. The equanimous mind can experience the pleasure of a beautiful day without desperately clinging to it. It can endure the pain of a headache with patience, knowing it will pass. It can accept a compliment graciously, without it inflating the ego, and it can hear criticism without collapsing into shame or defensiveness. It understands that both praise and blame are just the fleeting opinions of others, as unstable as the wind itself. This does not mean we become passive robots. We still act to create positive conditions in our lives, but our inner peace no longer depends on the success of those actions. Our stability is found within, in the stillness of our own well-trained mind, not in the chaotic and unpredictable world of external events. There is an old and wise story that perfectly illustrates the spirit of equanimity. A farmer in a small village lived with his only son and his only horse. One day, the horse ran away. The farmer's neighbors all came to console him. "Oh, what terrible luck," they said. "Your only horse is gone." The farmer simply shrugged and replied, "Maybe." The next week, the horse returned, and it was not alone. It was leading a dozen strong wild horses back to the farm. The neighbors were overjoyed for him. "What incredible good fortune," they exclaimed. The farmer looked at the new horses and said, "Maybe." The following day, the farmer's son was trying to tame one of the wild horses when he was thrown to the ground, and his leg was badly broken. The neighbors gathered again, shaking their heads. "What a horrible disaster," they said. "Your son, who is your only help, is now crippled." The farmer, looking at his son's injury, replied quietly, "Maybe." A few weeks later, the emperor's army marched into the village, forcibly conscripting every able-bodied young man to fight in a bloody and hopeless war. When they saw the farmer's son with his broken leg, they passed him by. He was the only young man in the village to be spared. This story beautifully captures the wisdom of upekkha. We so often rush to label events as good or bad, a triumph or a tragedy, based on a very limited, short-term perspective. We simply do not know the full story. We cannot see the endless chain of causes and consequences. The farmer's mind is the equanimous mind. It is the maybe mind, the spacious wisdom that refrains from premature judgment, that allows life to unfold without needing to immediately categorize and react to every event. It is the quiet trust that there is a bigger picture that we cannot yet see. Equanimity is said to be the crown jewel of the four divine abodes of the heart. It is the quality that protects and balances the others. It ensures that our loving kindness does not become grasping attachment. It ensures that our compassion does not become overwhelming grief. It brings a profound wisdom to our caring, allowing us to love the world fully without being destroyed by it. It is the wisdom that knows when to act and when to accept. It is the strength to do everything we can to help a situation, and also the strength to accept the outcome with grace when it is beyond our control. With a heart that has been made warm and radiant by loving kindness, responsive and engaged by compassion, and now rendered stable and unshakable by equanimity, we have cultivated a truly resilient and noble spirit. We are no longer a fragile leaf blown about by every worldly wind. We have become the mountain, rooted in a deep and quiet peace. Armed with this profound inner balance, we are now fully prepared to turn our attention to some of the most persistent and specific fears that haunt our modern lives, beginning with the paralyzing fear of failure and the stinging fear of judgment. Having cultivated a heart that is warm with love, active with compassion, and stable with equanimity, we have built a powerful inner refuge. From this place of strength, we can now turn to face some of the most formidable and pervasive sources of anxiety in our modern world, the twin specters of failure and judgment. We live in a culture that worships success and is terrified of failure. We are conditioned from a young age to achieve, to win, to accumulate accomplishments. At the same time, we live in an age of unprecedented social visibility, where our lives are often on display, subject to the constant, silent, and sometimes public judgment of others. This combination creates a high-pressure environment where the fear of not measuring up and the fear of what others will think can become a paralyzing force, stifling our creativity, inhibiting our courage, and causing a constant, low-grade hum of anxiety. The wisdom of the path we have been walking offers us a set of powerful tools, not to guarantee that we will never fail or be judged, but to fundamentally change our relationship with these fears, freeing us to live with greater authenticity and courage. Let us first address the fear of failure. When a project we have poured our heart into fails, when a business collapses, when we are rejected for a position we desperately wanted, the pain can be immense. But where does the deepest sting of this pain come from? It comes from the ego's instantaneous and complete identification with the event. The mind does not say, "The project has failed." The mind screams, "I am a failure." We fuse our entire sense of self, our core identity, with this external outcome. Failure becomes a verdict on our fundamental worth as a human being. This is what creates the profound feeling of shame, the desire to hide, and the feeling of utter devastation. Here, the profound teaching of anatta, or non-self, becomes our most powerful ally. We have already investigated our experience and have seen that there is no solid, permanent, unchanging self to be found. What we call the self is a flowing, dynamic process of body, thoughts, feelings, and consciousness. If this is true, then who exactly is this I that is a failure? Is your body a failure? Are your feelings a failure? Are your thoughts a failure? When we look closely, we see that failure is just a label, a harsh judgment that the mind superimposes onto an event. The event itself is simply an outcome that was different from the one we desired. It is feedback, it is data, it is information. The teaching of anatta allows us to create a vital, liberating space between our awareness and the event. The pain of the loss is still real. We must honor that. But the story of I am a failure is seen for what it is, an illusion, a painful but empty thought. By letting go of a solid self, we let go of a solid self to fail. We can then begin to see failure not as a judgment on our being, but as a valuable, albeit painful, part of our becoming. Closely tied to the fear of failure is the fear of judgment. the deep-seated anxiety about what other people think of us. This fear is a manifestation of our attachment to the 8 worldly winds, specifically the winds of praise and blame, fame and disrepute. We crave the praise of others, and we are terrified of their blame. We have outsourced our sense of self-worth to the fickle and ever-changing court of public opinion. This is a fragile and stressful way to live. Here, we apply the wisdom of anicca, or impermanence. The thoughts and opinions of other people are among the most impermanent and unreliable phenomena in the universe. Someone may praise you today for the very same quality they criticize you for tomorrow. An entire group may admire you one week and shun you the next. To build our inner home on such shifting sands is to guarantee a life of anxiety. The wisdom of impermanence teaches us to view both praise and blame as passing weather. When praise comes, we can accept it graciously without letting it inflate our ego. We can say thank you and enjoy the pleasant feeling, while knowing this too will pass. When blame or criticism comes, we can listen to it with an open mind to see if there is any truth we can learn from, but we do not have to be shattered by it. We can acknowledge the sting of the unpleasant feeling, while knowing this too will pass. Our true refuge, our true stability, is not found in the validation of others. It is found in the calm and equanimous heart we have cultivated through our own practice. These 2 insights, non-self and impermanence, provide the wisdom to reframe our fears. But the path also gives us an active tool to work with: right effort. Our culture is overwhelmingly focused on outcomes. We celebrate the winner, the best-selling author, the billionaire CEO. The process is often ignored. Right effort invites us to flip this equation. It encourages us to place our primary focus and find our primary satisfaction in the process, not the outcome. The crucial questions become not did I win or did I succeed, but rather did I act with integrity? Did I bring my best, most mindful effort to the task? Was my intention wholesome and compassionate? If we can answer yes to these questions, then from the perspective of our practice, we have already succeeded, regardless of the external result. This shift is profoundly liberating. It allows us to find joy and meaning in the daily work itself, not just in the hoped-for reward at the end. We become like a master potter who finds deep satisfaction in the feeling of centering the clay on the wheel, in the skillful pressure of their hands, in the beauty of the emerging form, regardless of whether the pot will later sell or be admired. The joy is in the doing, not in the having done. Let us imagine a passionate entrepreneur. She has a brilliant idea and pours years of her life, her savings, and her energy into building a startup company. She works with integrity and creativity. But due to market conditions beyond her control, the company fails and she has to shut it down. If she is operating from the conventional view, she is likely to be crushed. I am a failure, she will think. I let my investors down. I let my family down. People will think I'm a fool. She is completely identified with the outcome. But if she has been cultivating the path, her response, while still painful, will be different. She will allow herself to feel the grief and disappointment, the natural dukkha of the situation. But she can apply the wisdom of anatta. My identity, my worth, is not this company. This was an experience, a project, not the entirety of who I am. She can apply the wisdom of anicca. This painful situation is temporary. My reputation will change. New opportunities will arise. And most importantly, she can apply the wisdom of right effort. The outcome was not what I wanted, but I can look back and know that I acted with passion and integrity every single day. I am proud of the effort I gave and the person I was while doing it. This perspective does not erase the pain, but it transforms it. It allows her to learn from the experience, to maintain her self-respect, and to eventually move forward with resilience and wisdom. By applying these profound teachings, we can systematically dismantle the power that the fear of failure and judgment holds over our lives. We learn to act from a place of inner conviction, not a place of fear. We untie our well-being from the unpredictable winds of fortune and the fleeting opinions of others, and we moor it to the unshakable bedrock of our own practice. This liberates an immense amount of mental and emotional energy that was previously consumed by worry and self-doubt. Having begun to make peace with these fears related to our place in the outer world, we are now ready to turn our attention to an even more intimate and subtle fear. The fear of our own inner world, the fear of emptiness, silence, and the prospect of being truly alone. Having faced the outer world fears of failure and judgment, we now turn our gaze inward to confront a fear that is, for many, even more profound. The fear of stillness, of silence, of being alone. We live in an age of unprecedented noise and distraction. Our pockets vibrate with notifications, our ears are filled with podcasts and music, and our eyes are fed a limitless stream of content. We have become masters of filling every spare moment with some form of external stimulation. We do this, often unconsciously, to avoid a deep and unsettling anxiety, the fear of what we might find or not find if we were to simply stop. It is the fear of the quiet room, the fear of an empty schedule, the fear that if we cease our constant doing and consuming, we will be confronted with a vast, lonely, and terrifying emptiness inside. This section is an invitation to gently question that fear, to walk into the quiet room of our own being, and to discover not an emptiness to be feared, but a fullness to be embraced. To begin this exploration, we must make a crucial distinction between two words we often use interchangeably: loneliness and solitude. Loneliness is a painful experience. It is a feeling of lack, of disconnection, of involuntary isolation. It is the heart's craving for connection that is going unmet. When we are lonely, we feel a deficiency, as if a vital part of us is missing. It is a state of poverty of spirit. Solitude, on the other hand, is not a lack, but a presence. It is the state of being alone with oneself, not out of rejection, but by choice. It is the joy of being in one's own good company. Solitude is a state of inner richness, of being so fully present to your own being that you do not feel a lack. The deep fear that drives our addiction to distraction is the fear of loneliness. But the great, hidden potential of a spiritual life is the discovery of a deep and nourishing solitude. The journey is not about learning to endure loneliness. It is about transforming loneliness into solitude by learning how to befriend ourselves. How do we do this? The key, as with so much of the path, lies in the practice of right mindfulness. The feeling of emptiness arises when our mind is not present, when we are lost in anxious thoughts about the future or regretful thoughts about the past. The present moment feels hollow, a mere waiting room for something else. But when we bring our full embodied attention to the here and now, we discover that the present moment is never empty. It is always and already full. The practice is to fill the container of the moment with our awareness. Let us take the simple act of drinking a cup of tea. The distracted way is to gulp it down while scrolling on our phone or worrying about our to-do list. The tea is gone, and we barely noticed it. The mindful way is to turn the act of drinking tea into a meditation. We feel the warmth of the cup in our hands. We watch the steam rise in delicate patterns. We notice the rich color of the liquid. We bring the cup to our nose and inhale its aroma. We take a small sip and let the warmth and taste fill our mouth. We feel the sensation of swallowing, the warmth spreading through our chest. In these few moments, we are completely present. There is no emptiness. There is only the fullness of a rich sensory experience. This same practice can be applied to anything. The feeling of water on your skin in the shower, the sound of rain against the window, the complex flavors of a single bite of food. By learning to be fully present with these simple things, we cultivate a deep appreciation for the readily available joys of life. Our desperate need for ever more intense external stimulation begins to fade, replaced by a quiet contentment with what is already here. This leads us to the radical act of embracing non-doing. Our culture is obsessed with productivity. We feel a constant pressure to be busy, to be achieving, to be improving. Our self-worth often gets tangled up in how much we can accomplish. The idea of simply doing nothing can trigger feelings of guilt and anxiety. Yet it is in these moments of non-doing that we can find our deepest rest and peace. The practice is to intentionally create moments in your day where you have no agenda at all. It could be 5 minutes of simply sitting in a chair and looking out a window. It could be lying on the grass and watching the clouds drift by. At first, this will likely feel very uncomfortable. The mind, accustomed to constant activity, will protest. The monkey mind will chatter restlessly, urging you to get up, check your phone, make a list, do something. The practice is to not fight this restlessness, but to simply watch it with mindful awareness. Notice the urge to move. Notice the anxious thought. See them as you would see the clouds in the sky, as temporary weather patterns passing through your awareness. By sitting still and observing this inner agitation without giving in to it, you slowly starve it of its power. And in the stillness that begins to emerge underneath that agitation, you discover a profound peace, a sense of being that is not dependent on doing. You discover that your inherent worth is not in what you accomplish, but simply in your being. There is a story of a great meditator who went to live as a hermit, high on a remote mountain. A traveler, full of admiration, made the difficult journey to visit him. Seeing the hermit's simple hut and isolated existence, the traveler asked, "Master, you are here all alone. Don't you ever feel terribly lonely?" The master smiled warmly and replied, "Oh no, I am never lonely now, but I used to be very lonely. I used to live in the city. I went to parties. I was surrounded by people, always seeking company, always trying to fill myself up. And in the midst of those crowds, I felt a deep and painful loneliness. It is only since I have come here to be truly alone that I have found true companionship. Now, the mountains are my friends. The wind and the stars are my conversation. My own quiet mind is my most trusted companion. Before, I was empty and seeking to be filled. Now, I am full, and I have no need for anything more." This story perfectly illustrates the transformation from loneliness to solitude. Loneliness is an inner state of craving. Solitude is an inner state of contentment. The deepest companionship we can ever find is with our own awakened heart, by learning to be present with the simple gifts of life, by embracing stillness, and by befriending our own mind. We diffuse the fear of emptiness. We realize that the quiet room we were so afraid of is not an empty void, but a sacred space. It is a space filled with peace, clarity, and a quiet, self-sufficient joy. We no longer need to run from ourselves. We can finally come home. This profound discovery that contentment and peace are not found in the noisy acquisition of external things, but in the quiet cultivation of our inner world, leads us to the final, culminating insight of our entire journey. It compels us to ask one last question: what then is happiness? We have traveled far on this inner journey. We have diagnosed the disquiet of our lives, traced it to its source in our own craving mind, and discovered the profound possibility of peace. We have walked the eightfold path, cultivating wisdom, ethical conduct, and a disciplined mind. We have faced our fears, softened our hearts, and learned to find richness in stillness. And now, this entire journey culminates in a final, radical re-evaluation of the very thing we thought we were seeking from the beginning: happiness. From birth, we are conditioned to believe that happiness is a destination. It is a prize to be won, a state to be achieved, a place to arrive at after a long and difficult struggle. We are taught that it lies just on the other side of the next promotion, the next relationship, the next purchase, the next accomplishment. And so we spend our lives in a state of breathless pursuit, like a person chasing their own shadow. The faster we run, the faster it eludes us. We believe that if we can just arrange all the external pieces of our lives in the correct configuration, happiness will finally click into place and be ours forever. This endless, exhausting chase for a future state of satisfaction is the very definition of tanha, the thirst that we have already identified as the root cause of all our suffering. The tragic irony is that the frantic pursuit of happiness is the very thing that pushes it further away. The wisdom of the path invites us to stop running. It asks us to question the very nature of the happiness we are chasing. The state we usually call happiness is one of excitement, pleasure, and positive stimulation. It is a wonderful feeling, but by its very nature, it is impermanent. It depends entirely on external conditions being just right. When those conditions change, as they always do, this form of happiness vanishes, leaving us feeling empty and craving the next hit. This is not true, lasting peace. The path points towards a different quality, a deeper well-being. The Pali word is sukha. While often translated as happiness, its meaning is closer to a profound and abiding peace, a contentment that is not dependent on the roller coaster of life's ups and downs. It is not the agitated excitement of the waves crashing on the surface of the ocean. It is the deep, silent, immovable stillness of the ocean's depths, which remains undisturbed no matter how turbulent the surface becomes. This peace, this sukha, is not something we need to acquire or create. In a revolutionary reversal of our usual thinking, this wisdom teaches that peace is the mind's natural default state. It is our birthright. It is the fundamental nature of awareness when it is not being churned up by the winds of craving and aversion. Our spiritual practice, therefore, is not a process of building something new. It is a process of subtraction, of purification. It is the work of allowing the mud of our mental agitations to settle, so that the natural clarity and tranquility of the water can be revealed. Peace is not what we get at the end. Peace is what is left when we let go of everything that is not peace. This insight transforms our entire understanding of the path itself. A mind conditioned by ambition sees the Eightfold Path as a linear project, a series of levels to be completed in order to win the prize of enlightenment at the end. But this goal-oriented mindset can become just another form of striving, another expression of the craving to become something better in the future. The deeper wisdom is to realize that the path is the destination. The peace is in the walking. The liberation is not a distant event, but a present moment possibility. Every time you choose to meet a difficult situation with patience instead of anger, that is the fruit of the path. Every time you notice a judgmental thought and let it go, that is the fruit of the path. Every mindful breath, every moment of genuine connection with another being, every small act of generosity, these are not just steps on the way to happiness. These are happiness. Happiness is not a goal to be achieved. It is a way of being to be inhabited, moment by moment. When we let go of striving for a future destination, we are finally free to fully arrive in the only place life ever happens, right here, right now. Let us return, one last time, to where our journey began, with the image of a person lying awake at 3 in the morning, tormented by a storm of anxiety. Let us imagine that person now, after having walked this path. They still wake up at 3 in the morning. The city outside still hums its restless tune. The challenges of their life, the bills, the responsibilities, the uncertainties have not magically disappeared, but something fundamental within them has changed. As they lie there and notice the familiar tightness in their chest, the racing of their mind, they no longer meet it with resistance. There is no more desperate struggle, no more frantic battle to get back to sleep. Instead, there is a soft, gentle recognition. Ah, here is wakefulness. Here is the feeling of anxiety. They meet the experience with the light of mindfulness, not the fire of judgment. Instead of being swept away by the river of thoughts, they rest on the anchor of their breath, feeling its simple, rhythmic presence. They might offer themselves a phrase of metta, "May I be peaceful," right here in this wakefulness. They might reflect on anicca, "This state is not permanent, it will change." They might even feel a sense of gratitude for this quiet, uninterrupted time to simply be with themselves and practice. The war is over. The peace they have found is not the peace of a sleeping body, but the much deeper peace of a non-struggling mind. They are okay with being awake. In this simple, profound acceptance of the moment as it is, they have found a freedom that no amount of sleep could ever provide. This is the tangible fruit of the path. So, happiness, in the end, is not a prize we win. It is the peace we uncover when we finally stop fighting with reality. It is the quiet joy that arises from a mind that is no longer at war with itself. The entire journey, from understanding our suffering to the cultivation of the highest wisdom, has not been about becoming a perfect, superhuman being. It has been about becoming a truly, fully, and kindly human being. It has been a journey of returning home, of peeling away the layers of fear and confusion to rediscover the luminous, peaceful, and compassionate nature that has been our true essence all along. The the path does not lead us to a faraway, exotic destination. It leads us right back here, to the heart of our own immediate experience, but it gives us new eyes with which to see, and a new heart with which to hold it all. We began our journey together, in the quiet, restless hours of the night, in a space filled with the anxieties of our modern world. We started with the honest recognition of a fundamental disquiet, a shared fever of the heart we came to know as dukkha. With courage, we looked for its cause, tracing it not to a flawed world, but to the deep, insatiable thirst within our own minds, the grasping for permanence in a world of constant change we called tanha. And then, a light appeared on the horizon, the profound and hopeful truth of Nirodha, the promise that this fever could break, that this thirst could be quenched, that a lasting peace was possible. We were given a map for the journey home, the noble eightfold path, a practical and compassionate guide to living. We walked this path together, learning to see the world with wisdom, to act and speak with kindness, and to cultivate a mind that is calm, clear, and concentrated. We learned to soften our hearts with love, to meet suffering with compassion, and to stand with unshakable balance amidst the winds of life. We have journeyed from the diagnosis of our suffering to the embodiment of its solution. And what we have discovered at the end of this long path is a simple but revolutionary truth. The peace we have been seeking is not, and has never been, a destination to be reached. It is not a prize to be won at the end of a great struggle. It is not found in a different place, a different job, or a different set of circumstances. Peace is an inside job. It is the natural state of a mind that is no longer at war with itself, no longer struggling against the present moment. The gentle lullaby that soothes the restless heart is not a sound that comes from the outside. It is the inner voice of your own wisdom, the quiet whisper of your own compassion, the steady, rhythmic beat of your own mindful presence. Peace is not the absence of storms in your life. It is the discovery of an unshakable shelter within your own being, the calm center of the cyclone where you can rest, watchful and unafraid, while the winds howl around you. Therefore, this journey does not end here. It begins here. The tools have been offered. The path has been illuminated. The capacity for this profound peace is not the special property of saints or sages. It is your own deepest nature, your birthright, waiting patiently to be uncovered. You do not need to become someone else to find it. You only need to be more fully, more kindly, and more mindfully who you already are. The power to transform your inner world, and in doing so, to transform your experience of the outer world, rests entirely in your own hands, in your own heart, in this very moment. The peace you seek is not in a distant future. It is here, now, waiting for you. The door is open. The path is clear. All that is ever required is that you take the next gentle step,